We're going to welcome everyone to the Polk County Board of Supervisors, Tuesday, July 20th meeting, and call the meeting to order. Clerk, do we have receipt of evidence?
Yes.
Notice.
County Board of Supervisors July 20th meeting notice and agenda was posted in the Government Center building in two places, posted on the county website on July 9th, 2021, and was published in a legal newspaper the week of July 12th, 2021. In addition, on Friday, July 9th, 2021 at 11:02 a.m., the Office of the County Clerk distributed copies of such notice of meeting to supervisors and media via email or mail.
And Corporation Counsel, does that meet the proper notice?
Yes, it does.
Roll call?
Brad Olson,
Here.
Doug Rowdy,
Here.
Steve Warndahl,
Here.
Snelson,
Here.
Tracy LeBlanc, here, Dan Rook,
Here.
Mike Pritchard,
Here.
Sharon Kelly, here, Kim O'Connell,
Here.
Amy Middleton, here, Jay Lou,
Here.
Fran Duncanson, here, Sarkan, John Bonaprise,
Here.
and Joe Demling.
Here.
15 are here.
You, John, do you want to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Before we start the Pledge of Allegiance, I want to, behalf of all of us, want to wish our best to Joe Demling. He lost his brother this week, so there was four of the. They were kind of our neighbors in Farmington. We couldn't pronounce Demling. We call them the Dumpling Kids. But anyway, Joe, we wish you the best, and being an Army veteran, I want to have you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Number 5, any members with conflicts will let us know at the time of discussion. We have a motion to approve the agenda.
Oh,
And a second?
Second.
Second by Amy. Is there any discussion on the agenda? Supervisor Pritchard?
So if it's on this item or on the next item, there is on the consent agenda, a resolution 3321. If possible, I'd like to have a little discussion about that.
So we can have it right now. There's a motion, a second to approve it. Wouldn't this be the proper time to discuss it?
Sure.
Yeah, so go ahead.
It's a St. Croix Township,
You said 3321 or 3221?
3321. It's 7B, resolution number 3321 for rezoning of a portion of, I think it's 28 acres on Big Rock Creek on Highway 87. It abuts Highway 87. And the material I've looked at that I got from Jason was it's a 64 unit campground that the proposal is to put in there.
So can I just want to pause for a minute about starting to talk about this is a rezone. I want corporate counsel to advise us before we start asking questions like that first. Okay, Mike?
That's fine. Yeah, I just,
Let's let corporation counsel talk to us about what we can talk about, what we can't talk about, because you're presuming a rezone that you're thinking about the use. And tonight we're only talking about a rezone. So Leah, can you follow up on this?
Sure. So it's similar to the events that happened surrounding that one red barn a while ago, where there's 2 steps to changing a use. First, you need to have the rezone, so it becomes either a permitted or conditional use in that new zoning district. That's the step we are here. Whatever the applicants plan on doing later as far as applying for a permit or a conditional use permit to do a particular use, it cannot be used as a basis for a reason to grant or deny a change in the zoning district. You can only use whether or not it's relatively consistent with the properties near it and consistent with a comprehensive plan. So I would caution anyone from having a conversation about what a potential applicant might want to apply for in the future as far as a use, when you're only talking about the rezone.
So I think that's clear, Mike, so your question, if you strictly talk about the rezone, how did it happen? Did it get approved at a town? What did our agencies do? But I don't think legally, we cannot talk about what someone might do with the rezone tonight.
Can the committee report on what it did? I don't think there's any committee report at that.
Sure, we can ask the committee chair to, and I'll get to you in a minute, John.
The committee, we went through it and we voted unanimously to have the zoning because the town of St. Croix Falls has their own zoning. So it'll fall under their jurisdiction anyway.
And
But why are we approving it?
It's the process the state makes us go through, that it still has to be approved at the county level. Even though that town is self-zoned. We have to still, it goes through us.
So the committee made a unanimous vote to move it on. Sharon's from that township. Can you explain how the township position is?
Well, the town, the only question I have on this resolution is it's saying it's rezoning it from recreational business, commercial B2 to RA5. Those are county districts, not town. The town didn't do that. The town zoned it within their zoning districts, and I don't remember off the top of my head which ones it went from to and to, but these are county districts. So I don't know if, because it says the town has approved said district change. We didn't approve any county district change. We approved a town district change. So this should probably read the town district changes. I have that information at home because I have all the documentation from when we did this. But that's the only thing I see that I would have a question on this. And I didn't notice it when we were in the environmental services because we had just, I knew we had approved the rezone, but I didn't realize that the districts that it was
Maria,
listed.
can you answer that?
Well, I can only presume, is this within the shoreland?
No.
So I don't know where the error is there.
Yeah. So I don't know,
It's
and I could be
working
wrong.
on tomorrow to get the 3 towns that are zoned. They get
Right,
these
but if it's not in
zoning districts changed to the right.
And I could be wrong.
But if it's
I
not
just
shoreline.
thought that being that it said the town has approved said district change, we didn't approve a county district change, we approved a town district change.
Is your town district change the same as the county's district?
No, we have different districts. They don't
Different
match at all.
Yeah, that's what's the conflict sometimes. So we have to sort it out tomorrow on all of them.
Is it fair to defer that?
Well,
We do that?
Bob, can you explain to us about this, please?
Yeah, it's just a simple rezone, whereas the committee on July 7th, had a public hearing, and there was a zoning district change from Business District 2 to RA5, which is a simple rezone. The count,
Did you say, I didn't hear that first part, just change from what to what?
B2 to RA5.
But those are county districts, not counties.
Right.
A whole other.
Yeah.
Whole different thing.
Mr. Chair,
But my question is, I question the line where it says the town board of St. Croix Falls has approved said district change. They approved the district change within the town, not the county's district change. You know what I mean?
John?
Isn't our procedure move for adoption with a second? And then we have a discussion? Did I miss
We
that?
did that. We did a first and a second in discussion.
I missed that. Excuse me, I was doing some paperwork.
Anticipate, conditional use, but that's also outside the conversation. You all at the town of St. Croix Falls approved both the district change as well as a number of conditions under the special.
Special exception.
So I could see perhaps the applicant coming to the county, and this will be in front of the full board regarding the CUP conditions.
Lee, can you give us some more direction on this? Is there any needed? I mean,
Well, I don't think it's a controversy as far as the district change, whether we're talking the town or the county, because I think you said it backwards. This would be going from RA5 to commercial.
Right, from RA5 to commercial.
So, and that would be consistent both at the town to have it commercial and then at the county to have them both be consistent. So I don't think there's any controversy between the
So-
town and the county. as far
No,
as-
there's like 30 different uses, and they probably have what, 20 in that district. So they could, it actually could be anything.
So when it comes back, at some point, someone comes back in for a CUP, it's gonna go back.
Yeah.
Would it
could
be-
The town has already approved a special exception, which is their version of a CUP.
Sure.
And if it's not in the shoreland, why would they ever come to the county for a CUP in a?
So they don't come
in a
back to the
town? They would
county,
Not be coming back.
They probably would.
They probably wouldn't then.
Yeah, then they do.
because it's not in the shoreline district.
No, it's not shoreland.
Okay. All right, so that's our discussion.
So it's just clearing up that sentence.
Well, then, do you want to take, I don't know that, can we clear that under the adoption of consent agenda, or do we move it to actually have a motion to, with language to clean it up, or do we clean it up now?
I would wait until, I would just, based upon this discussion, remove it from the consent agenda.
Okay,
And then we can go right into that agenda topic, just since we've already started talking about it. Make that clarification, so then somebody could move to approve the resolution clarifying that the second whereas approved a similar district change, add the word similar that way, or consistent district
Yes.
change, something like
Yes.
that. And then get a second and be
so
done.
do we have a motion to remove it from the consent agenda?
I make a motion.
Second it, all in favor on that motion? Aye. Carried. All right, so we will handle that after public comment. Where do we put that, Malia?
Pardon me?
Where do we
After we
put,
vote on the approval of the agenda.
oh, after we vote on this
So
before?
now you'll
public-
be approving the agenda with that modification, removing it and moving it.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the adoption of the consent agenda? With removing,
No, we gotta vote on the approval of the agenda as changed first. We haven't voted on that.
we just voted on removing it from the consent agenda. We already approved the agenda. We've
Now
approved
we have to
the,
approve the agenda as changed.
Is that what he
We
just
didn't
said?
vote on that. I don't think, did we? I didn't. Yeah, we have voted on that.
so go ahead, Connell, tell me, what's your motion?
There's no motion. We have to approve the agenda as changed.
I thought it was Brooklyn Middleton had made a motion and second to approve the agenda, and we had discussion on
And then
this.
discussion, so we
We
haven't
have to go
voted on
back to
that.
the original motion and vote on that one.
Okay, that's what I thought I asked. Do we have a motion? Because now on the consent agenda is only resolution 3221.
No, you're still missing it. We haven't voted on number 6 yet to approve the agenda as changed. We have to vote on that.
Ah, sorry, I crossed it off my list. That's why I'm stuck on 7.
Yep, I'm on 6.
Gotcha.
There, okay.
See, the Bucks are playing tonight, and I'd like to get out of here quick.
Adjourn any time.
Okay, we got a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second? I'm fine with
I'll
that.
second.
Don't just need this or not.
Can we do that, guys?
No.
It's a big night for the Bucks.
For Wisconsin.
Yeah, you got that right. So do we have a motion to approve the amended agenda, number
We had
6?
that. We just voted on the amended agenda.
We're under discussion now, aren't we?
We did discussion, so now we vote.
Okay,
Then we go to 7.
all in favor by saying aye? Opposed? Carried.
7. Cool. Wait, we go.
We're rolling.
Tim, I had the hat on too tight today.
Yep,
Now we're on 7.
there.
Now with that amended agenda, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? And the only thing on it, to be clear, is 3221.
And A. And A.
And A?
A and B, the minutes and
Oh,
the.
A and B. We got a first and a second.
A and C.
A and C. Come on, O'Connell, now you're messing me up.
No, A and C,
A and C.
there. Good thing you're back.
Yeah, it sure is.
Oh, yeah.
Missed you a lot, Kim.
Yeah, I bet.
We have
I'll make a
approval.
motion. Was
Yeah,
there a
we need a
motion?
motion.
I'll make a motion to have the consent agenda A and C. And then discuss B after that.
We have a second by Brooke. All in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, carried. B, do we have a motion on resolution 33-21?
Move to approve.
Do we have a second? Olson,
Prove it as amended,
As
right?
amended.
Yeah.
Correct.
as amended.
Did you? No,
As
we
the
haven't
agenda, no, we haven't
amended it.
amended it yet. We're just
Okay.
making it so we can talk about it.
Okay.
So you're good, Olson's good. We got a
So,
first and a second.
so if his motion can be, if he'd be open to amending your original motion to approve, adding the word consistent.
Adding the word consistent.
Oh, you want to do it right now
In the
instead of
second-
having any more discussion?
Well, that way you'll have a first and a second on that, and then you
Issue.
can just.
Okay.
And you have to change, flip those around, in the
Yeah.
first one.
Right.
Whereas.
Say that again, Brooke.
I don't think we need to
it?
flip it. It reads correctly. I think there was just an error. It's from.
Oh, from,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
Let's just.
So let's be clear exactly what, so Mike understands, what are we actually changing in resolution? The motion by Rook is what are we changing in the resolution 33-21?
On line 8, we're changing the word said to consistent.
That's it.
That's it.
So that's the motion. We have a second on that by Olson.
Oh,
Any more discussion about that change, Mike?
I'm just looking for my copy here. With that change, will we ever see anything more as to what goes in on that property or not?
If it's in the shoreland zoning area,
We don't know if it's in the shoreland or not.
it is.
It's about a
It
quarter
claims that
mile
it's in
from the
here.
river.
That's not shoreline. That's city riverway, and it's less, it was not in shoreline. I don't have anything in my notes that it was in shoreline. So it is.
But we're amending the shoreline zoning ordinance in this resolution.
Yeah.
So if it's not in there, I believe it must be in there, or it wouldn't have come here in the first place.
So if it's in the shoreline ordinance, Mike, it will come back to the county board.
As a conditional use application.
Right. It's not in the shoreline. The township handles those issues, correct?
Correct.
Supervisor Warndall.
When it does come back to us, it'll come with a map. It'll show us where it lays on the land.
Right,
Yes.
Because I mean, there's the class 1 trout stream.
but it won't
There's
come,
ponds back
Right,
in there.
right.
And it'll show us where it's gonna be.
it won't come back, however, to the full board. It will only go to environmental services who hears conditional use application.
Yeah.
But it would be a public hearing that's published, and neighbors and any supervisors or anyone who is concerned would be able to come and speak at that meeting.
And the town already had a public meeting regarding their special exception too.
They support it.
Well, some people did, some didn't, but the board did,
Board
The
support.
board supported the project
yes,
for the rezone
yes. And the conditional use, and the special exception,
already. Good.
yes,
And for that to go through, we need to run it through the county.
yes,
And it might touch the shoreline. It might hit within 1,000 feet of something.
yes.
300 feet.
300 feet of a stream. Okay, any further questions about this? Okay, seeing none. All in favor of the amendments to resolution 3321, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Negative, say aye, the same. Carried. Public comment. 3 minutes. Do we have public comment?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have quite a few public comments up here today.
All right, and just to make sure, we will hold everyone to 3 minutes. So come up and introduce yourself. Tell us where you're from.
Hold of 30 minutes.
Max of 30 minutes. But we are going to hold 3 minute we're going to hold the line on the 3 minutes, and I hear a little ding here, and I will end public comment.
Well, my name is John Persico, and I'm a resident of Frederick, Wisconsin for the last 11 years. I first came out to this area in 1965, the United States Air Force, where I was stationed at Osceola Air Force Station. I was originally from Brooklyn, New York. I loved it so much, I never went back. I want to read you something that I think is very germane to this issue of environmental degradation that might be caused by this proposed CAFO. This is actually from a letter that Pope Francis wrote in 2015 called On Care for the Common Home. The Rio Declaration of 1992 states that where there are threats of serious or irreversible damage, lack of full scientific certainty shall not be used as a pretext for postponing cost-effective measures which prevent environmental degradation. This precautionary principle makes it possible to protect those who are most vulnerable and whose ability to defend their interests to assemble incontrovertible evidence is limited. If objective information suggests that serious and irreversible damage may result, a project should be halted or modified, even in the absence of indisputable proof. Here, the burden of proof is effectively reversed, since in such cases, objective and conclusive demonstrations will have to be brought forward to demonstrate that the proposed activity will not cause serious harm to the environment or to those that inhabit it. In the face of possible risks to the environment which may affect the common good now and in the future, decisions must be made based on a comparison of the risks and benefits foreseen for the various possible alternatives. This is especially the case when a project may lead to a greater use of natural resources, higher levels of emission or discharge, an increase of refuse, or significant changes to the landscape, the habitats of protected species, or public spaces. Such projects, if sufficiently studied, can profoundly affect the quality of life of an area due to very different factors such as unforeseen noise pollution, the shrinking of visual horizons, the loss of cultural values, or the effects of energy use. The culture of consumerism, which prioritizes short-term gain and private interest, can make it easy to rubber stamp authorization or to conceal information. This does not mean being opposed to any technological innovations which can bring about an improvement in the quality of life. But it does mean that profit cannot be the sole criterion to be taken into account, and that when significant new information comes to light, a reassessment should be made with the involvement of all interested parties. The outcome may be a decision not to proceed with a given project, to modify it, or to consider alternative proposals. Here too, it should always be kept in mind that environmental protection cannot be assured solely on the basis of financial calculations of cost and benefits. The environment is one of those goods that cannot be adequately safeguarded or promoted by market forces. Once more, we need to reject the magical conception of the market, which would suggest that problems can be solved simply by an increase in the profits of companies or individuals. Is it realistic to hope that those who are obsessed with maximizing profits will stop to reflect on the environmental damage which they will leave behind for future generations? Where profits alone count, there can be no...
Thank you. Thank you. That's 3 minutes.
Well, thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
Good evening, Jeff Peterson, Town of Georgetown. Those of you who came in the front entrance probably saw the rally that we had outside before the meeting. That was a rally of folks who are fearful. We're fearful because we don't think that the amendments that you all passed to the comprehensive and the shoreline ordinances protect us from the worst dangers of CAFOs. We're concerned about our property values. We're concerned about our air and water quality. We're concerned that you didn't take the time to really look at options for protecting our quality of life. We had a supervisor speak to us minutes ago outside from Bayfield County. She wasn't speaking as a supervisor, but she was relating to us some of the things that they've done in Bayfield to protect their residents from the worst effects of CAFOs. And she talked about the operations ordinance that they've adopted, Ashland County has adopted, Douglas County has adopted, and various towns, including our own town of Eureka, have adopted. Those ordinances cover everybody within the jurisdiction. One of the problems, one of the main failings of what you all did in, I think it was February, is that you left a lot of us hanging out to dry. I live in the town of Georgetown. I have no protection from the amendments that you passed. Neither do my neighbors in the town of Johnstown or in the town of Sterling. You could have done better, and we expect you to do better. So a lot of us are here tonight to ask you to take up this issue again and to really live up to your vision statement, which is to improve the quality of life. You have not improved it by the passage of those amendments. You haven't even maintained it. I fear that you're allowing it to degrade. We have a lot of young people moving into this area, young farmers who want to work the land. We heard from a number of them this evening, and you may hear from them after I'm done. They moved to Polk County because they love it here. They love our environment. They love the fresh air and the clean water, but they're not going to stick around if we start getting CAFOs and start looking like Iowa here. And that's what we're fearful of. It's not just going to be one CAFO. It's going to be CAFOs all over the place or wherever they're allowed. And right now, that's a pretty big chunk of the county. So please give this some thought. I think you can do better. Let's go back to the drawing board and come up with an ordinance, an operations ordinance that really protects our quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, thanks for listening to us. I'm Mary Falk. I'm from Trade Lake Township. I live half mile north of Polk County line. My son lives in Clam Falls and my parents live in Eureka Center. So I'm speaking for them too. I'm a raw milk cheese producer. I've been doing this for over 25 years and I'm going to brag a little bit because it's really important. This is one of the cheeses we make. It's brought over $20 million worth of advertising to Burnett County and Polk County. We've been on multiple TV stations, newspapers. We've won all the top awards in the nation. Plus, we were also named the Bon Appetit and Food Network Food Artisans of the Year. But the one I'm most proud of is the Better Homes and Gardens Life Preserver, Earth Saver Award, because of what we do for the water supply. Because the way we farm, we preserve our water. Because our water is what's important for making this cheese. So we have artesian springs, what the animals taste comes out in the flavor of the cheese. But more importantly also is what they smell. What they smell goes in through their olfactory glands and comes out through their mammary glands. There's even a law on the books in Wisconsin still that you cannot feed silage in your barn within 2 hours of milking because of the off flavors of silage to the milk, just from them smelling it. So this will destroy us. The CAFO in Trade Lake will destroy our farm. It'll destroy the honey producer, bees that's on the Trade River where they want to spread the manure. There's a bunch of small farms in our area that stand to lose everything because the tourism will stop. We're a hubbub. We're like becoming like that little Napa Valley of tourism in the northern part of Polk County and Burnett County. So we're asking you to please reconsider and do whatever you can to protect this. And there's one other thing, I'm talking really fast because I want everybody else to be able to talk. So our county supervisor from Trade Lake said she's only received 2 phone calls in favor of this CAFO. One was from Jim Moline, who owns the property and stands to make a lot of money selling it. And the other one was from Brad Olson 2 years ago when my neighbors didn't even know a CAFO was being proposed. My supervisor, Dorothy Richards, received a phone call from Supervisor Brad Olson, who did not say he was his supervisor of Polk County, but he told her, you need to pass this and you need to make sure that this thing goes through. So Polk County, you need some desk cleaning of supervisors and finding out what's going on and who's doing what to benefit from this. Because it sure isn't about small scale farming. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
My name is Mark Bewley. I live in West Sweden Township. I've made that my home for 45 years. Recently, members of my family, including my daughter, son-in-law, and 6-year-old grandchild have moved back here. Shiloh's learned to swim and fish. I intend to make it my home and my family's home, but I too am afraid that you've given an open invitation to CAFOs. I've heard a lot of talk about tourism, bringing tourism in regards to the trails, and I've heard about a mythical center that's going to attract people. Well, a lot of cables, it's exactly the opposite of that. That destroys that plan. And I'd like to use a few minutes of my time to remember, as a public comment, to remind people here, we don't have to be led down this path. We have the ability to stop it. Let's keep at it.
Thank you. Next, please.
My name is Claudia Malcolm. I live in Lake Town. I believe that your job is to protect us. And from the number of people that you've seen out there and heard from, this is very personal. And you can see that there's a lot of folks out here trying to say to you, please protect us, help us. We need clean water. Everything that we do up here goes downstream. Please help us protect our property, our water, and our air. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hi there, my name is Emily Hansen. I live in Alden Township. I brought a bucket of cucumbers here with me that I grew on my farm. My husband and I both earn our living from farming on a small diversified farm where we grow vegetables and raise grass-fed sheep and cattle. And we're both employed full-time on the farm. And I would reckon that many of you in that room, even if you don't farm yourselves, come from farming in some way or have relatives who do. And you probably know that farming is not an easy way to make a living, but small farmers, especially family farms, rely on a network of other farms, friends, neighbors, to make it work, whether it's borrowing equipment, sharing ideas, passing seed varieties back and forth, doing childcare for each other. It's all about having a community of people who can help each other out, because farming is not an easy way to make a living, but we're doing the good work of growing healthy food for our community, and everybody needs that. And I'm here to tell you that if you don't step up to take some action against these hog CAFOs moving into our area, that the small farms like mine are going to be at risk. My friend is a beekeeper whose land will be directly impacted by this first operation, and who's to say how many more countless small farms are going to be affected by these large operations moving in. And that's going to affect me too, even if my township isn't the most at risk and it's not going in across the street from my farm. It affects the people in my community, in my farming community, and that affects me. So this will have a ripple effect, and it will not be a good one. And we need you as the people who represent us, the people in your county, to step up and say, no, this is not the way forward that we want for development in this county. We want to develop and support small sustainable farms, medium-sized family farms who are rooted in this community, who are supporting each other, who are protecting the land and the water and the air. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Does that water look clean enough to drink? I took that out of the lake I swim in yesterday, Bone Lake. You pollute that, there go to the fish, there goes the eagles that eat the fish, the beavers, there goes your tourism, there goes Polk County. And we will call you if you do that. I will.
Say your name.
Yeah, so please, next, please state your name and where you live. Thank you.
I'm David Butler. I live in Richfield, Minnesota. I have a cabin on Half Moon Lake. I may be a little late in getting into this procedure, and I'm sorry about that. But I'm here tonight to represent the Half Moon Lake Conservancy. Our job is to acquire wetlands and that feed into the lake, and we're concerned about phosphorus coming into the lake. And My question is, I'm not making a comment, I'm asking a question. What research have you done on the effect of the hog operations on the groundwaters that feed into the lakes in the county? I suspect you have done some research on that. I'm asking if we can have copies of that so we can do our own analysis of what has been determined. That's my request. And I don't know how I get that address to you, but maybe I can contact you later. Thank you.
Mr. Butler, you can contact the clerk's office and they can get you in touch with anyone you need to and get information from the county. Next, please.
Good evening. Thank you for taking the time to listen to all of us. This is my view. I am a taxpayer in St. Croix County.
Hold on a minute. Can you please state your name?
Yes, my name is Beth Wood, and my husband Warren and I live on the west side of Cedar Lake in St. Croix County, Wisconsin. This is our view, and this is Polk County. 2/3 of Cedar Lake is in Polk County, and 1/3 is in St. Croix County. The water does not respect a county line. The water flows into the north end of Cedar Lake from Horse Creek in Polk County, and it flows out into Cedar Creek in St. Croix County, into the Apple River, into the St. Croix River, and so on. The water flows. The quality of the water affects everyone in the watershed, the health of our families, our well water, our quality of life, and the value of our properties. The residents of Cedar Lake from both counties have spent a great deal of time and money improving the water quality of Cedar Lake. Clean water is a deliberate policy choice. We expect our county representatives from both Polk and St. Croix counties to protect our families and our properties. The entire watershed can be contaminated by one careless act, which could go unreported for days or weeks, as happened with the Emerald Dairy in St. Croix County. It contaminated wells and the water for miles around. We need to ensure that there are strict regulations in place that protect our water source from contamination and destruction. We need to ensure that taxpayers in both counties are protected from the financial burden of cleaning up after a contamination, and which could be a public health disaster. We all need to be engaged in what is happening in our watershed, and we need our representatives to hear us and to act. I am also here as the environmental advocate of the Star Prairie Land Preservation Trust. The trust protects about 500 acres of land in northern St. Croix and southern Polk County. And we implore you to work to get some regulations in place that will keep these hog CAFOs from literally destroying Northwest Wisconsin. They aren't coming here for the cheap land prices. They're coming here because they've already destroyed.
That's 3 minutes.
Where they're coming
Thank you. Thank you. Next, please.
I am Chris Tao. I live in the village of Frederick. So for the rally, I made a big 4x8 foot sign. I shouldn't say I did, some friends and I made it. And it asks, what do you love about living in Polk County? And some of the things out during that rally that people wrote or drew about were the wildlife. They love swimming in the Apple River and the lakes, some of which you've heard about. They love the biological diversity. They love the fresh air. Maybe not today, but most of the time. The smell of the air, the clean water. and they love growing food. These are people who love being here and love so many things about the county. The idea that a large corporate animal feeding operation would buy up land, it threatens all of this. Some farmer friends of mine worry they'll lose their farm to pollution, knowing the DNR isn't able to adequately oversee and enforce existing regulations. So please don't give up. I know you don't have unlimited power, but you can still use your positions to make a difference, such as Brad Olson did with the Clam Falls Dam and getting money from the state for that. So work with the state to give the DNR more funding and push them to regulate so we can actually trust their oversight. Pass a resolution that puts pressure on the state government to take action, or even maybe a referendum like we did with that fair maps issue. Or take the risk of a lawsuit like Bayfield County and others. We are people who love this county and we need your help to protect it and lead it into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments?
Hello, my name is Holly Walsh and I live in Osceola, Wisconsin. And my husband and I moved here 17 years ago, and precisely for the natural resources and the natural beauty here, for the clean air. We have an artisan well at our home, and we live very close to the St. Croix River. We swim in the river regularly. We moved here also because of all the organic farms. We love the local small farms that are here that support us, that provide food for us. We really appreciate the parks, and it's just been incredible to live here. We love living here, and we want to see that the land and the water and the air remain clean and pure, and that we protect all these wonderful small farms that are in the area. So I hope that you will please reconsider and protect us and all that is here that we love so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kathleen, and I've been working as a farm worker on different farms around.
Where do you, Kathleen, can you give us your whole name and where you live?
My name is Kathleen Hobart. I live in the Blackbrook Township. Yeah, I've been working as a farm worker on different farms around Polk County for about 5 years now. And I just love it. I love the people. I love the nature and the animals. I really love farming. And as somebody earlier said, I think Emily said, farm work is not easy. It's hard work. So at the end of the day, I love to go over to Pike's Hole on the Apple River and go swimming. So this is what I brought with me today as part of the Apple River. And it's just the most beautiful clean water, especially in these 90 degree days. I just want to jump in and cool myself down. It's always cool. I'm a younger person who's getting ready to make somewhere my permanent home. And I want it to be Polk County. But if there's a giant CAFO moving in that's going to pollute our water and our air, I don't think I can stay here, especially as somebody who struggles with asthma. I can't live near a CAFO. It's not going to work. I'll get very sick, and other people are going to get sick too. So I just plead with you to take this seriously. This isn't a small family farm. This is a 26,000 hog CAFO, plus all of the baby pigs and all the carcasses and all the manure. This is giant. We don't have anything like this in Wisconsin that I know of yet. So this is going to change everything. And once we have one, there's going to be more. So just really hoping you can use your conscience to think about what's important. maybe to you, you and your family, do you want to live next to a CAFO? I don't, and I don't think anybody else here wants to. So I just hope you'll make the right choice and think about everyone in this county and the animals and the water. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hello, my name is Lindsay Potter and I live in Georgetown, and this is my son Riley. He's 5 months old, not quite. And we're here today to tell you that we love to go on hikes. That's one of the best things to do with Riley. When he's teething, when he's frustrated, when he's upset, we go to a nearby lake where he can splash his toes in the water. We go on segments of the Ice Age Trail and listen to the animals and look at the trees and explore the nature there. And I fear so much that if we continue to live where we live and this CAFO comes in, that we will sell that part of his future and he will no longer be able to play outside because the air and the water won't be clean, and he won't be able to go swimming because it will be toxic. And so, you know, we grow our own food, we farm in this area, and I am worried that there are a lot of people in our generation who are going to want to move away if you let this CAFO come in here. And I don't think that that is a cost that's worth paying in order to grow food for these foreign multinationals and billionaires. So thank you. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hi there. My name is Liam Bratton, and this is Winsome. And one thing I just wanted to add, mostly to what the other mother said, was not only are people going to move away, but people are going to come here. And I think a lot of people have been considering coming here as an outshoot of the Twin Cities, obviously the cabins, but just thinking a little bit to the future, there's just a lot more that can be happening here if these CAFOs aren't here. My family and I own a small business, a coffee shop right on the Apple River. We get a lot of recreational tourism that comes through, and it supports our business. And if those riverways aren't safe, then what I hope our county board will be protecting local businesses and viable futures are just going to be kind of dried up. So just thinking about these little ones and the businesses that do exist here and the ones that could exist, I just urge you to listen to these people here and to the people that you're representing. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this will be the last one. We'll be at our 30 minutes with one more comment here. Unless someone in the audience that came for public comment has something besides CAFOs, I would take additional public comment if it's not on CAFOs. So go ahead, please. State your name and where you're from.
Hi, I'm Trudy Lorenz and I live in Osceola, Wisconsin. I've lived there 46 years. And as you probably know, the village of Osceola is just booming with tourism and with the wonderful Cascade Falls. And that goes up to St. Croix Falls, where I spend my time, which is that stunning, beautiful, amazing interstate park. And we get people from all over the world that come there and sign our guest book and want to know all about our trails and get pictures taken. So I would like you to think about the assets we have in this county and how important they are to all of us and what money they do generate and the kind of people we want to attract here. Not people that come up here to rape the land and have CAFOs. And I grew up on a farm and I can tell you that smell you'll never forget. So I asked you, why are we doing this? Are we doing this to make money? I think we can make more money keeping the people on the lakes happy who pay the majority of our taxes. Are we doing this because no one can say you can't do it? No, you were put in charge to protect us. So please do that. As my sign says, we want water that is safe and everyone's health is at jeopardy here. So thank you for listening and thanks for all you do, but please, please reconsider why we're not thinking about our assets that we will lose if we let this CAFO come in. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone that showed up for public comment that had something besides CAFO as their issue that wanted to talk to the board? Shabana, are you aware of anyone?
It doesn't look like anybody else has public comment other than CAFOs.
All right, thank you everyone for sharing your thoughts with us tonight on your issue. 9 County Board report, and I guess the first thing is about CAFO, so I don't know if anyone's going to stick around, but I did get a lot of calls. Obviously, as the chair, I get all kinds of phone calls and emails. I think everyone should have a turn at this job at least once while you're on the board. The one thing I did want to do, and I talked to some people too about the CAFOs, and there still seems to be a lot of misinformation out there about CAFOs. And clearly people are passionate about it, but there was a number of calls that came to me saying that people were spreading, and we get a lot of misinformation in the county. And people say things, and I heard it too tonight, where, you know, why are you letting this happen? Why is this coming too? So I did have staff reach out today just to verify, and the DNR on CAFO applications or even in process, there is still 0 CAFOs applications in Polk County. So I think everyone's referring to other counties around us. I just wanted to make sure everyone's aware of that, and the public's aware of that there is no CAFO coming to Polk County, and there has been no application for a CAFO in Polk County. And the other misinformation I hear is, and it's obviously because the fair is coming up, that there's, and I even got it at PTAG meetings this week, is that why is the county doing this? Why is the county doing this at the fair? I think it's very important that the public knows that the county does not run the fair. And I don't know why they keep talking like it's the county, you know, why is the county doing this? Why did the county change this? So I just wanted to put that out there too. And I'm hoping that our county will find a way. I've talked to the administrator about this, as having that public relation piece of it, because you get inundated with misinformation constantly. Someone has a cause and they create the story, and before you know it, it goes through 3 or 4 people. And unfortunately, I think the county has to find a better way to respond to the public, because the newspapers can't write everything and get everything right. And I don't know how to fix that, but it's the frustrating part of being chair is that you talk to someone on the phone and it's one person at a time or one email, and you don't have enough time to answer every email or phone call. But I hope our county board thinks about that, and maybe the administration, that we support some type of public relations, that we can keep information out there before people like this think we are approving tonight some type of CAFO in the county. That's all I have for my chair's report. County administrator's report.
Okay, thank you. First off, I want to tell you that the emergency administrative flexibility resolution that was passed regarding COVID-19 back in 1920 is no longer in effect. The resolution states that it will remain into effect until the end of the public health emergency. So all that did was give the administrator and the chairman a little bit of flexibility to make decisions, purchases, organization, or policies regarding health and safety and COVID. And so I'm just making it official that that has ended. We're not taking our eye off the ball. We're keeping our eyes on those numbers on a daily basis. And if things perk back up, we will be quick to do whatever is necessary. Clam Falls Dam update. As we mentioned last month, it has been confirmed now that the state budget does have $2 million, up to $2 million in it to repair the Clam Falls Dam. Now remember, that is simply the first of the criteria that needs to be met before we discuss it again. Other criteria include participation in funding from the Clam Falls area, citizens, property owners, tax people up there, or the people who are taxed up there. Second is contribution from the current owner of their escrow fund and possibly other resources so that the county can have an escrow fund. And then thirdly, we need to ensure availability of liability insurance for the county. We still need a little time to do these things. In fact, one of the things we're doing is verifying what the actual cost today would be to repair the dam, to make sure it's not going well over $2 million or over $2 million. And then alternatively, if we did own it, what would it cost today to remove it? So we're verifying those numbers. I think by next month, we'll have some updates from the current owner, maybe Clam Falls Dam, and then we'll have a firmer price to tell you what everything is. And we'll begin getting into whether or not we're going to have a heavy discussion on this. P-TAG, good news. They're making progress. I've been very impressed with our consulting company that's helping us out, our staff that is coordinating some events. This past week, we had 6 different stakeholder groups have the opportunity to provide input. In a few weeks, Alta, the consulting company, will come back with their summary of what they've heard and conclusions. And then we think before the budget time is up this year, they will actually have in front of P-TAG a proposed plan, which will then be thrown to the Environmental Services Committee and then on to the board. And hopefully we can take off from there. But the feedback so far has been the vast majority positive. CJCC, important priority and issue in this county. We recently hosted a site visit from the Department of Justice, who assessed, met people, met many of the staff, evaluated our programs. They gave us a report which was largely positive. They also gave us several recommendations. So I will be asking the Department of Justice if they would come back to a future board meeting and make a presentation about what they see, what we do well, how we can improve, and maybe what other counties and areas are doing. Redistricting there was a bill, or there was an item that was struck down by the governor. We wanted to, vast majority of counties said we may not have enough time to go through the redistricting process for the upcoming elections and meet the statutory requirements. Timing, the governor vetoed that. So we are moving ahead, and with the help of our clerk, our corporation counsel and administration, we are confident that we can put a timeline together so that we will meet the statutory deadline to have this redesigned and ready to go as of November. So you will be getting more information on that. Be discussing it in future meetings, as far as the process, how to do it. And then when we get the census data, which is what the delay is, they're going to release at the end of August, but at the end of August, it has to go to a third party who can help us translate the data, and we can use it and then start mapping the new district. So that is coming up. We'll be busy on it, and we'll be giving you timelines and possible meetings and those types of things. Building update, I'll just say LHB has been on it. They just recently did an electrical assessment. They're working on updated costs. And we'll get one estimate here pretty soon, and then another one, I believe in August. And at that time, I think by October, we'll have some real firm numbers, and that would be time for you all to make a decision. Do we want to borrow money? Do we want to vote a bond? Or do we want to do something else? So the discussions will be coming up for that here toward the end of the latter part of the year. Finally, I think all of you received from the fair a letter which had a proposed resolution on it. And if you have any questions about it, I can just say that our attorney has been in contact with their attorney. There's not much of an update other than we at the county are continuing to fulfill our budget obligations, helping them get whatever they need from us that we had in our agreement. And I think that the key is for us to get into the budget cycle where we can discuss these things, which is what we consented to last month.
Supervisor Pritchard?
Could you clarify, the redistricting, is that for supervisor districts or what?
Yeah, everything. It will be redistricting of, every 10 years with the census. So what we will have to do, you as a board, will look at what's the process you want to follow. Do the Board of Supervisors want to eyeball the the population shifts and changes and redraw it, or do you want to assign that to a committee of citizens, that type of thing?
I'm confused. Is this relating to legislative districts?
Yes.
What is the role of the county in doing that?
The supervisors we do the county district, right? You guys decide what the county districts or voting blocks will look like. So it's up to you guys to decide what process we're going to go through. And we've got some guidelines that the state provides us, and Wisconsin County Associations is helping us as well.
We do it every 10 years, right?
Right.
So you'll see the process start going through committees.
But the legislative district encompasses more than Polk County.
The whole state.
The whole state and the nation.
How do we work with the other counties?
Hey, that'll come through committee.
Just do our-
Yeah, we'll do our thing, Mike. Today is not the forum to decide how we're going to do it. Right?
Yeah, we don't deal with federal stuff.
Yeah. You want to shed some light on that?
I just had a comment that I've been involved in the past in doing this, and that also too, each municipality is going to have a chance to have a say so in this process as well.
Right. One does. Okay, any other questions for the administrator? We'll move on. And item 11, presentation and review of fiscal year 2020, added by Clifton Larson Allen.
Jonathan Sherwood, our audit manager, is on WebEx. He's going to be presenting that way because he was unable to be here in person. In front of you, all the supervisors have the best termed as the final draft of the executive summary of the CAFR, our financial report. In draft status, because the way it works is once the audit manager and his team finish and management here reviews, then it has to go through one more process with his management and the auditors before they're finished.
And this is just a presentation. It will, this information will go back through general government?
We can go, general government will get the full CAFR,
Right.
and we can go with general government, we can go through the full CAFR.
Right.
This is the executive summary that the whole board gets. Last year, we changed it so that the whole board got the information.
Right.
So this is Jonathan Sherwood, our audit manager.
Thank you very much for having me and allowing me to join you virtually here. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah, very well.
All right, fantastic, thanks. Yeah, I very much appreciate, with my schedule being what it is these days, being able to enjoy some of the positive side effects of COVID, and doing some of this remotely is actually a benefit. So as I dive into the numbers, I will be obviously highlighting COVID as being still a challenge here, obviously, for fiscal year 2020. So at the silver lining in this, I'll at least say that for scheduling purposes and attending more board meetings, it does us a whole lot of good to be able to do these things virtually. So first, I want to thank you for allowing me to be here tonight. I want to thank all of the finance staff, all the admin staff, and all the department managers that we get in there and kind of get in their hair when we are on site for field work. Probably add a lot more headaches than what they think that we're worth at times. We very much appreciate it, and that's really what allows us to get this audit done and finished every year. So we very much appreciate their efforts. So obviously we did have some issues dealing with COVID during 2020 for overall. So just a broad overall spectrum, the statement is when we start diving into some of these numbers that I'll be referencing for you, COVID basically impacts every single fund, every single department. And on paper, it's going to look and appear that we had, a significantly down year in terms of expenditures. Revenues basically held stable for the most part, as well as dramatic increases in COVID-related funding that started to trickle in 2020. So when we look at some of these department numbers and the operational results, the board is going to notice a dramatic increase to the bottom line in a vast majority of funds. And obviously speaking to Chad and the various department heads throughout the field work, and really one of the main drivers of these increases is just kind of the unknown of what was happening during 2020, and the real clamp down on spending to really get it boiled down to what was essential services. And a lot of the essential programming and everything still continued, obviously, but if there was any projects or initiatives that could be paused, were paused during 2020, which basically leads into financial resources were not spent during 2020, and you'll highlight some of these differences here when I dive into the numbers for us. So I am going to highlight the executive audit summary. In light of trying to make my comments as brief as possible, I don't think anybody would want me to present a 100-page plus document. And really, my comments are going to fall within the first 5 pages of the executive audit summary. So to dive into things, to start, page 1 there is just our audit report summary. My job as an external auditor is to come in and verify that the numbers of Polk County are materially correct, and we can apply or issue our audit opinion over the entire financial statements of the county. And as of right now, with our draft financial statements, we are issuing what's known as an unmodified or a clean opinion, which is the highest level of audit assurance that we can place on financial statements from an outside audit standpoint. So that's our goal. That's what we're striving for. It's one of the reasons that we end up submitting our financial statements. When I say we as the county, the county submits their financial statements for that CAPR reporting, which is a GFOA award program. All the diligence that we put into building this report actually gets recognized on a national level. Very important things that are going on there. The next couple of comments that I have for you is during the course of our audit, we also take a look and evaluate the internal controls of the county. Are things operating appropriately? Are all the assignments and all of the approvals happening where they're saying they're happening according to county policy? Happy to report we didn't find any instances of non-compliance with county policies in that regard. Nothing to the level that we couldn't clear up with department managers or finance and admin staff. There are 2 items that I do have to bring up to, they raise to a level of control where I need to bring them up at tonight's meeting. Their internal control findings is what the technical terms for them are. Both of them are repeat findings, very common in counties and governments your size and even larger. So the first is, again, these are both comments from last year that just carried forward, same type of issue that we have this year. The first one is just through the course of our audit work, we made material audit adjustments to the financial statements or to the financial records in order to get the financial statements in a presentable level. This doesn't have anything to do with the number necessarily of entries that we continue to make or have made. Chad and I discussed this earlier as well, that the number of audit adjustments over the last 2 to 3 years even has dramatically decreased. And that's, a direct highlight as to the work that Chad, finance staff, Rhoda, and everybody involved in those processes, very diligent in taking a look at the entries that we've made in the past. And they're usually routine entries. If we make an entry in one year, we're going to make that same entry next year. They've taken a look and taken a very good study as to what's typically our most problem area in the records, and they've gone ahead and corrected that well in advance. There's still a few pieces out there that we're working with, and it's our goal, as we continue to work through future audits, it's our goal is to completely eliminate this finding if at all possible. And we're going to strive to do that working with the county in the future. The next item here is just limited segregation of duties. This is, again, very common. I think just about every one of my governmental entities, counties, cities, villages, and school districts is who I primarily serve. Virtually all of them hold this same finding. And really, we need to, it's not economically viable, really, to completely eliminate this finding. You just have to increase your staff to such a level where it wouldn't be supportive of your budget in order to segregate things far enough. So for that one, I think you can expect to basically still see that one for years to come. Any questions on those findings or anything else? Otherwise, I can keep going here with my remarks. Hearing none. The last section here on that first page is just the reporting, regulatory reporting things that we also do as part of the audit. So outside of just building the financial statements and issuing our opinion, we do also do a few other things. The unaudited Form A and the audited Form A are both Department of Revenue required reports annually that we also do on behalf of the county. Based on obviously our audited numbers, then we submit them to DOR, which that's a very big factor in determining your transportation aids annually. And then also we also assist the highway department with pulling together their highway annual report or highway closing report. So just a few other benefits, things that we're providing from CLA's standpoint to assist the county with. Now to dive into some of the financial details. Again, I'm going to keep my comments high level, kind of pull out some highlights, some trends over the last 4 years, just some things just to keep in mind as we go through and as we transition into the budget season of developing the 2022 budget. If at any time anybody has any questions, feel free to interrupt me. Hopefully there isn't too much of a lag in my presentation here, so I won't just continue to speak while somebody's trying to get a hold of my attention. So item number 1 here on this first page, this is all of the financial activity of the general fund. So this is just basically your all-encompassing fund. It's used to account for the day-to-day operations of the county. So this top half here is the balance sheet activity up on the top. We've got, and on your balance sheet, this is just balances as of the end of the year, balances as of 12/31. So it's a useful tool to look at where balances were a few years ago and what trend, which direction are they going. So again, my comments about COVID being in a major impact in 2020 is very apparent on that first line, where you can see cash and investments sitting in the bank as of 12/31. You had $18.3 million sitting in your checkbook, various checkbooks at the bank. That is up roughly $4 million from the previous year. Again, the vast majority of that is because we have tax revenues, we have state aids and federal aids coming into the county, which we just didn't have the necessary expenditures to match up against them right as of the end of 2020. Not to say that this is a great vast reserve that is not going to be spent down in future periods and is probably already being spent down pretty dramatically in 2021. At the guidance of state and federal agencies that have granted us this money. So some of this is a timing issue, and another part of it is, again, just kind of clamping down on what is really our essential services of the county. Some of those other operations just didn't take place. So that's my first comment on cash and investments. That'll also be a similar theme when I get down to total expenditures when we talk operations here. But another highlight that I wanted to pull out that I've been reminding the county county board here for the last few years is about the third or fourth item down is advances from other funds. This is just a reminder that the general fund also then helps cash flow and helps pay for various capital items for other funds. And in this case, this is Golden Age Manor. Some of their building replacement activity has essentially been paid for right from the general fund. This is just a long-term loan that gets paid back over a number of years. 2020, it's down to $37,000, and I believe this entire amount will be paid back in full in 2021, assuming there isn't another need at Golden Age Manor. So that's what that number is, and why it's continuing to decrease is that they've just been making their payments back to the general fund as required after that initial basically loan from the general fund. Some of the other items that I want to highlight here, there aren't many other major trends that jump off the page at us here, all the way until you get down to the fund balance section, which is about halfway down the page. There's various different types of fund balance or equity or reserves of the county, some of which we can spend, we have our full control over, and then there's other ones that have restrictions placed on them, or we can't spend them until certain things occur. So in the case of our non-spendable items, we can't spend those until we actually make that collection, which is the case for the delinquent taxes that are outstanding, or some of the interfund advances from like Golden Age Manor. We obviously can't spend that at the general fund level until Golden Age Manor makes that payment back to us. Then we also have some committed fund balance, or I'm sorry, some restricted fund balance, which is restricted from an outside agency, typically grant funds, which are restricted for a particular purpose. Are set aside and they're reported separately. The other big one that we have out there that the county board and Chad and various finance and admin staff actually has direct access to, or kind of some direction over, is the assigned fund balance. So in 2020, we see that assigned fund balance sitting at $1.7 million. It's slightly down from the balance that was reported in 2019 at $2.5 million. There's detail within the audit report when the full audit report is made available to the board. You can jot down a note if you really want to dig into the numbers. It's on page 72 of the full audit report. It gives you a very detailed breakdown of what makes up that $1.7 million. Various activities such as your asset protection fund, which is set aside reserves for capital items and that kind of thing that need to be replaced. That's a very large chunk of that $1.7 million. Also for your vehicle fleet fund, so the various vehicles of the county will get replaced or repaired out of those funds. Also in there is the building improvement fund. So a lot of capital items, kind of your one-time major expenditures, can be funded and are available at $1.7 million set aside at the end of the year. So this all whittles its way down to what is the unassigned fund balance. That's our first shaded row there. So this is, again, there's 3 highlighted rows there. When an outside financial advisor or somebody that's going to analyze any governmental entity, they're going to look at basically these 3 lines to really gauge the financial health of the overall county at large. Take a look at your general fund, which is, again, your operating activities. Then you look at your unassigned fund balance. This is the true reserves at the end of the year. So going into 2021 or 2021 and 2022, what do we have available to us to spend down and use for governmental activities? At the end of 2020, you're going to see that balance there actually did dramatically increase. Again, that's very, very attributable to COVID expenditures being basically lowered as far as the operating expenses of the various departments, and a very large increase in revenues from state and federal sources. So yes, we did add to the fund balance, to unassigned fund balance, to the tune of about $4 million. Not to say that in 2021 and 2022, that number is not going to, that this balance will, I would expect, decrease pretty dramatically in 2021 once everything has kind of been reopening and getting back to normal. So we take that number, which is our true reserves, and compare it against what our actual general fund expenditures were for the year. So you can see our general fund expenditures were $27.8 million. We run a little bit of a ratio there of, if we had to say that, if we had to absolutely shut our doors as a governmental entity, not take in another dime, how long could we still provide governmental funds or governmental services without raising any more tax levy or bringing in any more tax collections or cutting off all state and federal funding? So roughly what we're saying is 63.5% of the general fund budget could be paid for directly out of true reserves of the county. That's how long you could last. It's essentially just over 6 months. You could operate the county based as of the 2020 balance. So when we're looking at that, again, we have a fund balance policy of the county. We want that percentage to be a minimum of 20%. Clearly, we're well advanced of that. Historically, CLA in Western Wisconsin, we have 40 counties that we audit as CLA in the state of Wisconsin, and 11 which are in Northwest Wisconsin. Historically, before COVID kind of craziness took over, the peers in the area were roughly at 48% of general fund expenditures. 2020 audits are still being finalized, so I don't have exact 2020 numbers, but my experience across the board over all of my governmental entities, like I was saying, counties, villages, cities, and school districts, across the board, we're seeing some significant increases in unassigned fund balance as of 2020, with the understanding, again, that the vast majority of these expenditures are just delayed in projects, delays in initiatives that are going to take place in 2021 and 2022, respectively. We're going to basically have a couple of catch-up years. The reason I keep on wanting to impress that upon the board is just because we see a fund balance number that I will say is very healthy financially. In the terms of COVID and in the world that I'm seeing at large from a governmental auditor standpoint, I don't see this as like super excessive by any means, knowing that we have some significant activity going forward in the years to come.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
What is your recommendation for a fund balance for Polk County? Do you have one?
The general rule of thumb is roughly about 33% is, after, I would say, after kind of the world settles down, that's kind of where you would want to target it. A bonding agency, an outside auditor, those types of things, they're going to look at that ratio, and you want to be about 33% of your general fund expenditures.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the general fund before I start diving into the rest of the activity of the county? Hearing none?
So I guess I will follow up. So our current policy is 20%.
Yes, sir.
You make a recommendation that we should look at that and have our minimum general fund balance to be maintained at 33%?
I would say that the county's minimum is like the floor that you would want to get to, that you would be comfortable living with the floor of 20%. If you would allow that to grow, and I apologize, I don't have the exact wording of the county policy. If it says that that's going to be the absolute minimum, that's totally acceptable. If you want to actually take a look at your county policy and actually look at the exact wording to say, okay, this is the absolute minimum we want to go before we're going to have to take drastic steps from the county board, If you want to actually set it to say our target or our goal is to maintain 33 to maybe give it a little bit of a cushion depending on what other major items are going to be happening in the future years. Because again, you look at this as like your rainy day fund, your checkbook, where you need to have some contingency funds already built into that unassigned fund balance. That's truly what this balance is supposed to be used for, is unforeseen things. How, if we have a major budget overage in 2021 here between now and the end of the year, how are you going to pay for it? It's going to come directly out of unassigned fund balance. So if we look at the county board policy, to answer your question directly, to me, a 20% floor would be definitely the lowest I would recommend going. You can definitely increase your policy to say we want to maintain or target something between 33 to maybe even look at what your peers are doing in Western Wisconsin to see, historically, like I was saying, most other districts or most other counties are around 48%, which is a little bit more healthy. I mean, that would also be acceptable to do as well, I guess, if that's what you're asking.
And our policy, so the board knows, is 20% triggers proration. So that is the floor where it starts triggering proration and drastic steps to maintain that.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 2, these are the various special revenue funds that they have a very specific revenue source coming into them, which raises to a level of special treatment. We track these activities separately so that the revenues that are coming in are spent for those specific activities, and we report them separately for reporting purposes. The first two are zeros across the board, is the Children and Families Fund and then the Health Services Fund. County policy dictates that every year these operations get zeroed out to the general fund. In a quote unquote good year where they've made a profit, all of those funds then get transferred back to the general fund. And in a bad year where they've dramatically have a decrease in fund balance or a negative fund balance, a loss, that gets covered by the general fund. So for the last 2 years, both of these activities actually did make a quote unquote profit. So we've actually, Children and Families had a profit for the last 2 years that we've closed to the general fund. Health Services had a profit in 2020, and then they were recovered by, I believe, a little bit of a loss in 2019. Again, COVID definitely reared its head in both of these activities. Your transfer from Children and Families back to the general fund was about 1.2 million, and Health Services was about a transfer of 392,000. 2019, for comparison, we had a transfer out of the Children's and Families back to the general fund of about 200,000. So roughly $1 million swing just in the operations of Children's and Families. Again, that's pretty dramatic. Some services were completely halted, so you didn't incur those expenditures for that activity. Therefore, all of that is being covered and brought back into the general fund. I haven't gone back to look at many older years, but in my experience as being involved in Polk County's audit, I can tell you that Children and Families and Human Services, when it was just Human Services for a number of years, the general fund had to transfer into both of those activities, multi-millions of dollars over a number of years in order to make those services whole and cover their losses year after year for a number of years. Just recently, obviously, I'm sure the board is aware that we've taken a very closer look. That's the whole reason why we split these funds into these separate Children and Families and Health Services. Took a very close look at those activities to ensure that we're more efficiently managing those programs, so we're not experiencing dramatic swings very consistently. So one of the reasons why we have such a dramatic increase is, number one, we're much more efficient at operating those activities at the county level. I did also add a few other lines on this table here. If you compare this handout from this year to last year, there are a few new funds that we did add to it in 2020. The recycling fund, and then obviously COVID relief fund is its own special fund where that revenue source is very, very restricted for a very narrow use of COVID eligible expenditures. Some of that guidance is still being developed by the federal agencies, but we're working through that, and that's $219,000 at the end of 2020 is restricted and can only be used and only be spent on those approved expenditures. But you can see across the board here, pretty much across the board, there's basically only increases in fund balance from 2019 into 2020. The exception being the recycling fund, because that's brand new. We just split that off into its own fund here in 2020. But again, COVID is basically our reasoning and our answer why our fund balances look very healthy in 2020. We do need to basically keep an eye on 2021 activities and make sure that these where these budgeted numbers are coming in from, and now the other end of COVID as we start ramping up, how that's going to impact these numbers going forward.
I have one question for you. Oh, go ahead,
Yes,
Amy.
Jonathan, I have a question on is the snowmobile ATV trail 213, is that basically our managing the pass-through from the trail passes and tax?
That's gonna be both public charges for services in snowmobiles and ATVs. So any trail passes are going to go in there for charges, for fees that users are going to be paid for. But primarily the major funding sources in there is state and federal dollars that come through, primarily state dollars from the DNR go into that fund to help maintain the trails. So that's
We're essentially it's sort of like we're managing and we pass through,
yes. Yep. Yep. And then some of this too also is a timing issue. Some of these grants then are written for like the snowmobile season, right? From from winter of 20 into the end of spring of 2021. So sometimes we'll get those funds in advance and we won't have the opportunity to spend them down, or we just don't need them right when they send us the money. So it's in advance. So that's sometimes why some of these numbers will look, kind of inflated from one year to the next as well, just because we've gotten that grant in advance and haven't yet made those expenditures on the back end.
Okay, thank you.
Jonathan, I got a question on, you talk about the recycling fund, $112,000 deficit. So is that a budgeting issue? Do we fix that in budgeting, or, that we didn't have enough in there and then we had more cost? And how does that balance out over time? Like, how do you fix that so you don't have $100,000 loss?
Yep, definitely a budgeting exercise for sure. We'd have to take a look at specifically at the, again, I can provide additional information that breaks down your total revenues that were brought into the recycling fund and compare it to the expenses that were charged against those revenues, which then obviously calculates where your $111,000 loss is. In practicality, this $111,000 loss, as you're seeing, is basically a 1-year snapshot of what it took, what we thought we were going to take, revenues going into it versus what the actual expenditures were of the recycling center. And then yes, so you're going to look at it from a budgeting standpoint of what are we charging in order for maybe user fees at the recycling center? What are the state aids, if there's any federal aids going in there? Primarily state aids are helping support this. And then if those funds are dwindling down or are starting to get scaled back from the state purpose, then is there any county levy, property tax levy that would be needed to go into there to support those activities? So that's the revenue.
Can you be specific on that 111,000? Was that a revenue shortfall, or was it a budgeting issue with additional cost to operate it? Is it an operation cost, or is it an income loss?
I guess I'm trying to determine the best way to respond to you, because I mean, to me, when I look at that, it's an operations cost. We know what our operations are. Did we fund it correctly? So we know we should be able to very clearly tell what revenues we're going to get from the state. So if we have a budget shortfall, by definition, in my opinion, it would be a revenue shortfall that would need to be made up by property taxes. So if we don't know if we don't know what our costs are.
Now, the one variable that's in there is going to be market pricing because it's a consumer business.
I understand. That's why I was trying to figure out, is it an income or is it an expense?
I think we would need to drill down on that a little bit for you and look, because you are subject to consumer pricing on the goods. So that could be the result of the shortfall as well.
Could be building maintenance.
Right.
Could be any of the above things, right?
Right. But we can look into it and see if it's O&M or if it's more consumer driven.
I just know we're starting to talk about an ordinance of recycling, and what are we going to do with it in the future? Joe?
I got a question on how come there's no statistics from 2019 or before?
In the recycling fund?
Because we created it back then.
So previous to 2020, the recycling center fund was all included in the general fund. And in 2020, the county created its own separate fund to track it separately and present it separately. So the recycling center fund activity for 2019 and previous can be determined. It's just going to take a lot more legwork in order to drill down and exactly where those costs are.
The revolving loan fund, I thought that all went to West Central, that we're into that,
When is that?
revolving.
The CDBG revolving loan fund?
Yeah, doesn't that all go through West Central?
We essentially manage it. We have the fiduciary responsibility of managing and maintaining it. But yeah, it's used for that.
But we don't use this money
No.
on a revolt, doesn't it go there?
Right.
I believe on that one, state statute dictates that since that grant originated with the county at one point in time, it is still remaining with the county. There would have to be specific steps in order to completely sign that money over to West Regional or whoever else would be wanting to maintain that. If you would want to get that off your books, you would have to take some legal action, I believe, in order to completely get rid of that.
None of these funds, they don't count against our, they're not being used in our fund balance, right?
Correct. These are their own separate funds, and this is their own separate fund balances as of 2020.
Gotcha.
So the sales tax, we have zero.
By policy, sales tax clears to the fund balance.
Okay.
The note on sales tax is the activity in sales tax for 2020, $3.9 million was brought in from sales tax and transferred over to the general fund. And I know at the very start of COVID, everybody was nationally and within state agencies were very concerned about where sales tax revenues were gonna show up. You know, where consumers out there spending with various stimulus dollars and whatnot. Local agencies actually noted not only did sales tax very often remain flat, but in Polk County's case, it actually increased as compared to 2019. $3.7 million in 2019 versus $3.9 million in 2020. So kind of a reverse assumption, what a lot of people were kind of fearful for at the very beginning. Moving on to page 3 here, item number 3, the debt service funds. So with governmental accounting, we just have a separate fund set up that we just make sure that we have all of our principal and interest payments, required principal and interest payments, running through and accounted for in its own special presentation. At the end of 2020, we had reserves on the books for about $102,000. This happens as you know, it's structured to be this way. These funds will be completely extinguished as we repay our debt. It's just a function of this is some money that we had left, you know, in our checkbook that is going to be used to meet principal and interest payments in the subsequent year. So it's, you know, this $102,000 is going to be used for 2021's payments. At the end of 2021, we're going to have a little bit of a residual there to make 2022's payments. Again, as we pay down all of our debts, this balance will come to zero. If at the end, after we're completely debt free, if that ever occurs and there's a balance left over in this, that would be remitted back to the general fund. So the good news is the county is meeting its required obligations of principal and interest. Item number 4 is the capital projects funds. It says various there. We actually have 2 of them to report in 2020. We've got the government center remodel and then the grandstand remodel project, I believe at the county fair. So the remaining balance on the books for those 2 activities is $10,692 at the end of 2020. In 2019, that $35,000 was just a set aside for the government center. Now we're going to switch gears on item number 5 is the enterprise funds, also known as a business type activity. So now you're going to see on these next set of financial statements, you're going to have assets and capital assets, long-term debt, and some other items that you weren't seeing that weren't impacting the fund statements of the governmental activities. So the first one to talk about is Golden Age Manor. Really, there's a couple of highlighted items here that I just want to make you aware, highlight the differences of some, again, those items that you're going to see differently. First is under the balance sheet summary. It's the WRS pension related asset. This is, again, for those that are maybe familiar with this activity. It's the WRS pension system in total from the state standpoint. Polk County is a participant of this. A number of years ago, there was an accounting change which required us as auditors to evaluate what is the liability to pay retirees, which are members of the WRS system. What is the liability to Polk County to make sure that there's enough on hand to meet retirement obligations of the WRS system? So in the state of Wisconsin, the WRS system is extremely well funded, one of the best funded in the nation. And actually, we actually in the state of Wisconsin report a pension asset in 2020. This has been flipping between a pension asset or a pension liability, meaning that all of the obligations that we have outstanding, we have a checkbook at the state of Wisconsin, the WRS system, that's sitting there to meet all of those and actually exceed the retirement obligations as of 12/31/2020. So it boils down to, we get a big giant pension asset and we boil it down then and break it and allocate that across who it basically belongs to at the county level. And in this case, Golden Age Manor actually shares about a $733,000 asset on their books. This is an asset, again, that's completely restricted. The county has nothing to do with this. We can't even touch it. That's why if you go a little bit further down the end of the page, it's under restricted net position is what we call our reserves in our enterprise funds. About that $736,000 that's sitting there is restricted. We can't touch it. We can't use it to better fund our operations of Golden Age Manor. There is another new item here to make you aware of, a couple of new items here, I guess. Under the current liabilities, and then a little bit further, a little bit below that is the long-term notes / capital lease payables is the full title of that line. In 2020, we have a balance of $973,500. This is the PPP loan that was obtained by Golden Age Manor and used to pay salaries and various allowable operating costs underneath the PPP program. And due to the accounting requirements that were not very clear at times, this is essentially a forgivable loan, as everybody's probably familiar with this loan. But the accounting terminology stated that so long as the forbearance hasn't been granted by the federal agency, that we technically need to leave it on the books as a long-term obligation, or it is debt to Golden Age Manor as of 12/31/2020. When this gets forgiven, then this $973,000 will be forgiven, and it will be in a revenue into Golden Age Manor, and that will hit the bottom line as grant proceeds or a contribution, and it will flow into total unrestricted net position. But as of 12/31/2020, for whatever sticking point that the feds wanted to say, is this was not currently in active forbearance, therefore it is a long-term obligation. If for whatever reason Golden Age Manor would not meet the terms of the PPP loan, it would potentially still be outstanding and potentially need to be paid back, therefore it's a liability. The other thing that you're going to see down at the very bottom again is the change in net position for Golden Age Manor. So on paper, again, it looks like we had a very positive year with about $920,000 being added to fund balance. Definitely goes against the trend of 2019 and even back to 2017, where you're kind of sitting at the swing between a loss or a gain of about $300,000. One of the major reasons why we have such a large increase in net position, again, is there was a COVID supplemental payments, COVID-19 payment that was received, specific grant funding specifically for nursing homes and long-term care facilities. So that was received in 2020, and obviously that was not received in the previous year. So that is the main driving force of why you've got such a large change. And also Golden Age Manor was also locked down, and they weren't incurring additional costs versus, so operating costs were down in Golden Age Manor during 2020 because things were locked down and not operating as they would in a normal year.
Question, maybe?
Go ahead, Mike.
Golden Age Manor assets and liabilities. Were you saying that those are totally separate from the county, or is the county responsible for the liabilities? What's that relationship?
Sure. So again, my feed here was a little choppy. So the Golden Age Manor assets and liabilities, they are maintained separately from the county. They're reported separately from the county. But at the end of the day, they are the legal obligation of Polk County. So the operations, first and foremost, the operations of Golden Age Manor are
All right. Sounds like he's saying we're in good shape. We're gonna try, or do we just let him come back? Or do you want to finish?
Oh,
Chad?
there he is.
Can I try to
Got it.
reconnect?
There we are. Yours.
I was fine with saying, hey, thanks for the report.
Can I, let me try to reconnect real quick because I can't hear anybody.
If he can't, I'll give you the last couple bullet
Can you
points.
hear
I
us?
can't I discussed.
Did he say at the start he had the 4 points that he was gonna go over already?
Yeah, there's one more point he hasn't hit.
Go ahead, Chad.
The last point that I wanted him to touch on as we were talking was the health insurance fund. Last year was 6.5 million. This year is 7.3 million. But we made the changes. All these policies we put in place don't actually take effect till this budget year. So that growth continued, but in 2021 and going forward, we should start to see that growth slow as we use that money for employee benefits and wages and that kind of stuff. But the health fund did go up a lot again in 2020, but we didn't put the new policies in effect till the 2021 budget. I just want the board to be aware of, that's why that growth is there.
Well, I'm back if people can hear me.
Yeah, Jonathan, I touched on the health fund while you were off, so I already went over it.
Appreciate that. Thanks for jumping the gun on that one. I was really hoping to, that was one of my big bullet points for you, Chad. To finish my comments on Golden Age Manor, I mean, the assets are under the direction, under the explicit use of Golden Age Manor, unless controlled by the nursing home board or further input by the county board. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. To further the next enterprise fund that I can touch on page 4 here is the operations of the Lime Fund. Obviously, with the subsequent events here that have taken place in 2021, there isn't really much that I need to highlight for you. You can see at the end of the year that it did have some income before operations was a loss of about $161,000. The net transfers in and out number there that you see is $223,000. That was actually a discovery when we were looking at the final fixed assets for the Lime Fund. There was some land that was actually owned and is part of the Lime Quarry, was actually previously always reported as a governmental asset in the general fund. So to make sure that we had that correct, we transferred that land over to this fund so we could see that properly on the books. So that's what you're seeing is that $223,000 accounting entry that went in there. That wasn't just some magical brand new revenue that obviously could have been spent or used to save the operations of the Lime Quarry or to continue operations of the Lime Quarry. That was strictly to get the assets of the county lined up into the correct fund. So at the end of the year, you can see that the total net position of the Lime Quarry of the Lime Fund was what, $1.3 million in total. Obviously, we'll take a look at the full accounting of the 2021 activity all the way up until the date of sale in 2021, and then I can report back to you as far as what the cost on paper were versus the proceeds of that whole sale transaction. Excuse me. Next item here for you under internal service funds, which are accounted for very similar to your enterprise funds, but the whole sole purpose of these is to provide internal services back to the county. So in this case, we have the highway department. When I'm looking at the highway department, obviously COVID really doesn't have a major impact in the highway outside of, typical operations. I mean, roads still needed to be plowed. Maybe a few construction projects here or there would have been delayed or whatever, but for the most part, infrastructure really didn't see that much of a slowdown in my experience of what I'm seeing across my client base. So I look at the line I usually look at is under net position, the unrestricted line. If we look at that line, we added to our unrestricted. So again, our revenues and our charges for services that we had from the highway fund exceeded our expenses. So for adding to that, that's usually a good sign when I look at highway departments. Are we remaining profitable? When I look at internal service funds, it's typically the goal is not just a break even. You definitely want to add to your unassigned or your unrestricted fund balance because these typically these activities have large capital needs. You're talking big pieces of equipment that need to get replaced and whatnot, and those resources are going to dramatically decrease your unrestricted fund balance, unrestricted net position when replacement needs to happen. Next on page 5, continuing on your internal service funds, Chad was also just mentioning the health insurance fund. As he was saying that, again, in 2020, your premiums exceeded your claims. So the amount of the charges that we had in 2020 still exceeded our claims. I know that the implementation in our initiative there to draw down on that fund balance, you won't see that full effect until 2021. That concludes our internal service funds. Then my last comment here for you is the long-term obligations, or item number 7 for you. This lays out all of the debt for Polk County in total. This includes Golden Age Manor. So that top number, that $10.7 million, includes the $900,000 PPP loan. So in 2021, or whenever that forbearance is granted, that will dramatically decrease that number right off the bat. Plus then all of your required principal and interest payments are going to come off the top of that as well going forward. So long story short, you didn't really, in my opinion, you didn't have any new debt during 2020. Yes, the PPP loan is technically part of that number, but in my mind, that's not really debt to you, as that's 99% going to get forgiven at the during 2021. There is a legal debt limit by Wisconsin state statute, which dictates how much debt you can go out and actually incur and be liable for from the county's perspective. The general obligation debt is a percentage of equalized value, of total equalized value of the county. Again, this number is not financially or fiscally reasonable that you're ever going to approach 100% of your legal debt capacity. But the total legal debt limit that you could potentially borrow under state statute is about $271 million, I guess, is the total number that's out there. We're using roughly 4% of our legal debt limit. Typically, a county isn't going to raise, even if you had a major construction project that you needed to build a new jail or a new whatever, the counties that are very highly leveraged, in my opinion, if they approximate even 35 or 30% of their legal debt limit, now they're really pushing the total amount of debt that's economically feasible for them to maintain. If you raise your debt limit, extravagantly, you're going to have some pretty upset taxpayers, and your public comments would probably need to go on a little bit longer than the 30 minutes we were limited to earlier. So in the grand scheme of things, Polk County is, very, very right-sized when it comes to leveraging, or your debt capacity is, actually fairly low at 4%. So if in the future there are capital items or major bonding issues that need to take place, you have the legal debt capacity to maintain that. Concludes all of my comments I want to make for you. Any other further questions or anything I can address at this point?
I have one for you, Jonathan. As you go through this, and I'm assuming it could be throughout Polk County, when you talk about unrestricted funds, got it in the highway, you had it in other places, are those unrestricted funds, and do you know what our total unrestricted funds are out throughout the county? Are those part of our fund balance?
The unrestricted funds are the unrestricted funds of those activities. So yes, in total, I don't know in total, I don't have a dollar amount for you. I could calculate that and provide it to you.
I would like that.
Sure, I can definitely do some research. I'll pass that along to Chad and he can share it with you.
All right, thank you. So the unrestricted funds in specific departments, there's departments that have unrestricted funds sitting out there along with a fund balance. It's a separate number, correct?
It's combined. Your unrestricted funds or your unassigned fund balance is a part of fund balance. If you go back,
so those numbers are counted in the fund balance.
Yes, sir.
All right. Then I don't need to know any. That's fine.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
I just want to say thanks to Chad, his finance staff, as well as the senior staff and the managers who helped put all these numbers together. It's quite a task, and they did a great job, I thought, this year.
Okay. Tab number 12.
On your desk is a handout. It has this month's report card, which mirrors last month as far as the same slides. I also provided last month's on page 4, 5, and 6. Beginning next month, once I have 3 months of data, I'll start doing some comparative slides for you guys. But there's no use showing trend lines on a 2-month period. A couple pullouts from it that I think are important to note. Big shift in the jail bookings this month from last month.
What page are you on? You're gonna go
On the top.
Could you go through every single chart real quick and just
Sure.
tell us what they all mean?
Sure. So the very first chart, top chart, charges actually filed by the DA having to do with substance abuse. And you'll see what they are for the pieces of pie and then how many of each charge. You see the predominant number of charges filed are related to methamphetamine. That's the gray area. If you go to the fourth page, the top chart is the same data just last month. And you'll see the charges filed and what type of charges. Next month, I'll start doing a comparative because I'll have 3 months for it. The second.
Somebody forgot page.
Yes, I did. You're absolutely right. And I thought about that at about 5:15 today. The second slide are the total jail bookings for the month of June. And then what I broke out is how many of the bookings were substance abuse related and how many were not substance abuse related. One thing I noticed in June, as opposed to May, is it was about half and half in May. It's about a 2-to-1, not substance abuse related. But you can't draw much from that until we have a few months data. The third slide is persons jailed to substance of choice. That means of those people booked for substance abuse charges, what drug was their drug of choice? In June, it was methamphetamine as the predominant. It was also the predominant in May. Fourth slide, top of page 2, unnumbered page 2. Substance abuse bookings by residency. I think this one's interesting, and this is holding true. If you look at it, we're breaking out who was arrested and booked for drug charges by people from Polk County as opposed to people not from Polk County. About half and half this month. It was fairly close to that last month. I think that's interesting. And that is an area I'm going to have staff delve into and look more closely at what are those trends within that area, because I think that's important when we talk about Polk County has a methamphetamine problem. We have a methamphetamine problem, there's no doubt, but how many of these arrested charges and what's the nature of people who actually live here as opposed to people visiting? Chart 5 is repeat offenders versus first-time offenders. So in blue is how many people that were booked this month for drug charges have prior drug charges. In orange, how many people booked this month don't have prior drug charges. I got to be honest, if you're looking at it from a trend analysis, you would want that majority to be blue. Never good when you see more orange, because that means there's more first-time drug offenders coming into the system. Substance abuse bookings by gender. This holds fairly true. It tends to be a 3-to-1, males versus females, whereas people book for drug charges.
I just have a question. It's broken down by gender. Is there any specific logic or reason why it's broken down gender or why that's viewed as being relevant?
When they look at programs, there are actually programs that are more receptive, and we want to shape those programs. We want to shape that therapy. We want to shape that outsourcing. So you're also, when you look at crime trending, you're going to look at gender, you're going to look at demographic data for crime. So you're also going to look at root cause. You know, what's root cause, and root cause demographics have a big deal to do with root cause.
Those in the jail as well.
In jail, it does, because it causes us problems. We have staffing requirements where we need to have so many ratios of female corrections officers and male and those kind of things. Substance abuse bookings by age category. This is one we look at. Again, you see in July, 20 to 30 and 31 to 40 are the predominant categories as far as the ages of the offenders. And then the last one is current treatment court participants. That's people presently enrolled. We're up 1 from last month. What I am happy to see, stage 1, 2, 3, and 4 are the various stages of the programs. Stage 4 is right before graduation. We want to start to see that normalize, where we have some equalization in each stage so that the system and the program That's people coming in, people going out, serving groups. And in May, we had nobody in stage one, but we've seen an uptick in June. So our goal is to have that more leveled so that we have people at each stage of the process and progressing through so that we can serve more people. As I said, next month, once I have 3-month data, I'll do some comparative graph for you that we're getting together.
That's very helpful for you to walk us through that. COVID-19, Tanya?
Almost past my bedtime here. You guys. Okay, so good news with COVID-19. We've seen our numbers drop. So for example, back in April, we had 303 positive cases. So far to date in July, as of last week's reporting, we had positive cases. So that's good news. Our percent of positivity in Polk County has decreased from 3.6% to 0.43%. The state rate right now is 1.3, so we're below state rate. More good news. Our vaccine rates is about 43% have received at least one dose. We're slightly behind the state average, 48%. People who have completed the series, either the 1 dose or the 2 doses that we have, we're again a little bit behind the state average of we're at 52%, state's at 58%. I think that's good news. I know the state is wanting those vaccine rates higher, but we're doing the best we can with trying to promote vaccine. So we do have our mobile vaccine clinic up and running. We'll be running that through August. You'll see some increased efforts probably around more highly traveled areas like home improvement stores, grocery stores. We get a lot of traffic there. So they're out and about hitting up, setting up and doing vaccines that way. We thank the Sheriff's Department for letting us use the command post. We will not be using it next week. So we're not doing those vaccine clinics next week. I believe they have it up at the fair. So they'll be set up doing that at the fair. We starting this Thursday, so in 2 days, we'll be able to offer all 3 vaccines. So we have never done the Pfizer vaccine before, but we've partnered with the tribe. They've got some Pfizer that we can administer. So that means if there's age 12 plus, we can do the 12 plus, but also offering that variety of all 3 based on patient choice. We also have a walk-in clinic every Tuesday here from 9 to 3. No appointment needed, just show up. And we will give you one of those 3. I think August 10th, I think we're starting the Pfizer here. And that will be from here on out. When we end the mobile vaccine clinics, it will be done here or by special request if we have a larger group requesting us to come on site, like some migrant workers, we've been doing those. We also do the COVID testing here on Mondays and Wednesdays. So that's a free test. It's a saliva test. We do that in the back of the parking lot. We've got staff who go out and meet the people in the car. They get the saliva test. We have UPS comes and picks it up. Front of the house, we're doing the vaccine. So we've got things coming and going on both ends. So I think good news, we're working with the schools on what it looks like to start another school year with COVID still being present. We don't know if there will be a spike in cases or not, but we're working with the schools and planning for if that does happen, how we respond.
Well, we have some questions.
Just one. There was a lot of kids in summer school this year, and we didn't see anything good.
You might hear too the Delta variant is prevalent, but CDC is telling us that the vaccine does cover for all of the variants. So if you've got the vaccine, you should be covered. Not 100%, none of the vaccines are, but more covered than if you don't have it.
Grace Wilson, just due to the large amount of people that go there, will we be giving shots at the fair?
We are not giving the shots.
End of my explanation, or okay.
We asked and they declined. The fair board had declined.
I was going to ask the same thing, not necessarily the fair, but yeah, if you're taking the command center down there and you've been working out of it, I was thinking the same thing. Why wouldn't with that many people going through the fair, and it's county owned property still. I'm just curious why we wouldn't just be able to do that. And then my other question really is you guys have the signs up saying, hey, COVID testing, stop in. I know we had to have appointments, but I know there's some young people that work for our business where I work. And I just find them, their comments are because we've even offered through our company to say, hey, you get paid time off to go get your COVID shot. We support that as a company. But I still find them saying, oh, I don't know when it is. But yet when we have the sign up here every Monday or every Wednesday, I'm just wondering if that's something you guys have discussed, that, there's a lot of people that drive by the building, come to the building, that, on those days that you could have that sign saying free testing, 9 to whatever, stop in. And if that was routinely done and everyone got in a habit, I'm just curious, have you guys?
Yeah, we do have some signage. I know when we did the drive-through clinic, we had the variable messaging board from the
that was very
highway,
effective.
flashing.
Yeah.
And that was great. You guys might be using it at Highway Shop if we could swipe it from when we would, but I think it might be used for highway stuff. But we do have some signage, and just trying to get that messaging out on our Facebook page, on the website of when we are offering. If we could say every Tuesday come in 9 to 3. That's when the vaccination is. You mentioned testing. Testing is on a different day.
But I'm just, it seems like the vaccine is what we're trying to get everyone
Yep.
vaccinated. And I just thought you guys, it was so good in the beginning.
Mhm.
And just because it's fallen off, I'm just wondering why I would just take it from the highway shop. I'm sure they could rent one. And they got a big unrestricted fund balance, I noticed. So I'm sure Mo can figure out a way to handle that cost. I think it would be better effective than Facebook and all
Yeah,
that stuff.
we'll see what we can do about signage and messaging to get people here or to some of those sites where the command post is going out and about. Just trying to lead the people to the water here.
Why, so can you explain a little more why the fair would not allow the county health department to vaccinate people at the command center? Was there any discussion?
Worked with Tracy a little bit to get them to discuss it, and I never heard back. So I don't know if, Tracy, if you could represent, or do you know what's said?
I know it's a safety thing. Because if somebody gets, you can't get emergency vehicles through there with all those people. If somebody were to have a reaction, you can't.
And if it was outside even the fair, like in the entryway where there's not traffic and stuff, there's just nothing that could have been figured out?
There's people still coming into the fair though, Chris. You're gonna get your shot there, you're gonna come into the fair. You're gonna do your waiting period, make sure that you're okay,
Right.
but you're still gonna come into the fair. Who's to say you're not gonna have some kind of a reaction?
I don't know, the health department you would have felt comfortable doing it though, correct? You would have felt comfortable and you asked to do it and you were turned down. Okay. Does that answer your question more thoroughly, Supervisor Olson?
Sure. I don't get it, but it answers.
Sure. Any other?
The EMS end of things, so I don't know anything about it, so.
Sure. Any other questions on what, Tanya? Thanks, Tanya. Do we want to take a break before we go committee of the whole?
Yes. Do we need a committee of the whole, really?
Yes, we really do. We'll get out of here quick, John, promise. As long as we don't ask a lot of questions, it could be very quick. Take a 5-minute break. Let's do it fast. On the committee of the whole, do we have a motion to go into committee of the whole?
Okay, motion, we go in the committee of the whole.
Second by Rowdy. All in favor by saying aye. Committee of the whole, update and discussion regarding American Rescue Plan ARP funds. I put this on the agenda. We brought it up at general government. And, there's a lot of talk out there about, hey, what should we do with the money? A lot of people are throwing all these ideas. I'm hearing all kinds of them. Project, let's go here, let's go there. And I asked the administrator if we could just slow that process down a tick, or at least for a month or two. And I'd like to have the board have a discussion about the process on how we want to go forward as a board. I think the process should become before the request for these projects. So I'd like, not that we got to spend a lot of time on it tonight, but I think it'd be important for staff to hear from the board in a committee of the whole discussion on what we think is process on how do we want to move forward with vetting projects. I'm assuming we would want to do it. General government seemed to think that we didn't want to take it on in general government, that just the committee would decide or make recommendations. So that's why it's here tonight. And I would just like to have a discussion about it and, and maybe it stays on our agenda for committee of the whole until we get to the point where, what is it? It's so many years away. You got to spend all the money, and I haven't seen government really work that fast to spend money on new ideas. And I think the clock is ticking, and before you know it, we better have projects to fund with this money, or we may not get it all. So maybe Chad and Vince can throw out something here and get the conversation going. More than that.
Well, I just as a general summary, if you recall, we got 4.25 million approximately. We'll get another 4.25 million. And as Mr. Nelson said, we're getting a variety of different requests, some on a napkin, some on a nice presentation, others in a letter. And I think from the staff, we're looking at these saying if we could get the appropriate information, we could assess them in a way that breaks them out for you. If we had certain criteria to say, does it meet the ARPA guidelines? Does it serve a great number of people? Is it something that will last a long time? And we could kind of give you an overview of each project. But I was listening to one today with Tracy, and Tracy's suggestion was, whoever, if we could either filter them or whatever, or maybe we don't filter them, that's up to you. But if we could bring the ones that you want to hear to you and let them make the plea, that way they can answer all your questions and suggestions. Yes.
So it sounds, Vince, what I'm hearing is you're talking about outside requests from outside.
Coming all over.
Yeah. To the county.
It could be outside requests. It could be inside requests. I mean, we're looking for good ideas, and I figure more ideas we get, the better. The one thing I'll caution, and I always say this to everybody, there are unlimited number of worthy ideas, but we can't fund them all. And we have an opportunity here with $8.5 million to do something that will last a long time and affect a lot of people, or we can do something different.
Go ahead, Mike.
I know in general government, we had reports from Chad the last couple of months, I think, but as I understood it, that the guidelines were still being formalized on what these funds could be spent on. And I think a step one would be for everyone in this room to get a copy of what those guidelines are, so we'd have some idea of what's eligible.
That'd be good. So let's just start making a list. So next month, we're going to have the guidelines presented to us on what we can do. I can tell you that there are the counties already passing resolutions and starting to appropriate funds. So there's some counties already moving forward on this. So, I don't want to be the last one in the state.
They could be emailed out right away.
Yeah, but we could, I think that's a great starting point, as Mike is saying, let's have on the screen what we can use the funds for. Fran?
Just want to throw out there that whoever is requesting some funding from the county for those monies, that they have skin in the game, that they also are making a contribution.
You're saying you want an evaluation type process in place.
Yeah, and I think too, if they're, I don't know if every municipality in Polk County applied for funds or not. I don't know that, or if that information is available, but in what I have also been learning about it is that there are some municipalities didn't get any money just because they didn't apply for it. Well, if they didn't apply for it and have the initiative to do that, and then they come to the county and want some of the funding from the county, I guess that's something I would really want to think about if you didn't apply for any money yourself.
You want a vetting process put in
Yes,
place.
yes.
Okay, so there's another idea. I think that's the idea real quick tonight, is that we kind of get through some of these ideas that we would, and I'm assuming we want to keep it in committee of the whole. Right, that you don't want a committee dealing with this. That's another question. I thought we should keep it in committee of the whole. Go ahead, Fran.
I'm just thinking committee of the whole should develop a process.
Process.
And depending upon how that process pans out,
Sure.
then for different issues, perhaps there are different committees.
Amy?
Vince, are we getting, when you said we're getting stuff on the backs of napkins, and then are these coming just without any, just out of their own initiative because they heard the county's got money, so bam, I'm gonna get in there? Or what?
It's all of the above.
Okay, so
And
it's just kind of random.
part of the reason of having it here in this meeting is to let the public know that you all will be making decisions going ahead. And I think the idea of having a vetting process is very important. There seems to be a sense among some people of, oh, you've got this much money, I want my share. But in reality, that's not what this is for, in my opinion. What the government did, or what the feds did, was say, we know there's been an impact of COVID. We want to provide money. You decide how you can offset the negative effect. Now, in general, they have said infrastructure for, water, sewer, and broadband, but they also have opened that up to a lot of different areas. Nobody's got a real easy explanation of it, but we know generally what we can do. We can do a lot. The other thing that Chad is better at explaining is, because we, in effect, lost revenue because of COVID, even though you just saw that our revenue looked pretty good, if you take out all the federal and state assistance, our revenue was not as well as it would have been. That money, in essence, is going to go back to our general fund. So not only do we have the opportunity to focus on ARPA goals, we're going to have some money, and we got to figure out exactly how much. It basically could go in our general fund, and we could do just about anything with it, within our policy.
You just said something key, though, is focusing on our goals, because shouldn't we be looking at what we identified as our top priorities?
Last year, we did that exercise.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
So you'd like to see what our goals were? That could
just
be,
how we can,
okay,
how we can use that money to help us reach those goals.
sure. All right, Joe, I'm gonna let everyone go first, Mike, once.
I don't know about the rest of the supervisors, but I've been getting a lot of calls from the elderly on the recycling.
So yeah, that would be a specific project. That would, we'd vet that then. So that's the point, is I've been getting calls for everything too. Lake districts, lake associations want money, townships want money, villages want money. I got 2 villages and a township in my district and 3 lake districts. They've all showed interest in, hey, what shovel-ready projects do we need to have ready to go to ask the county for funding? I said, I have no idea how the county is gonna decide how to hand out funding. And I just don't want to wait any longer to figure that out. I think I want to send a message to staff and everyone. We want to know now. Let's get the ball rolling, and let's start letting the supervisors decide how we want this process to go. Because it's ultimately going to come down to us, Doug.
Because we have broadband for
issue too. I didn't talk to Lakeland at the time about that, but I was talking to him because I don't know about anyone else, but the Lakeland used to put in, I mean, they still put in fiber, but if you gave them an easement, it came right to your door, right on your house for free. Well, they don't do that anymore. The average cost is between $1,500 and $1,800 to get to your house. I talked to Vince about this too, but they've had one long one that was 7,000. I'm just giving you those figures, but we should look into possibly some type of a help in paying the $1,500. How much, I don't know, but we can decide if we were to do it.
So that's another project. So you're saying we need to identify projects in our process. Tracy?
Vince and I did hear today from a Cedar Corp representative that we were kind of talking about our priorities list. And he did say, rather than putting money towards broadband, because there are a lot of broadband grants, funding abilities outside of, so rather than taking the money we could put towards different things, set that aside, the broadband piece, take advantage of what they have to offer outside of the ARPA program and kind of make your determinations that way.
Yeah, so then you're talking now about vetting a specific item on the list,
Right.
once we develop a list.
Right. Because
Okay.
there is those availabilities out there for broadband.
So in other words, I hear you saying there should be a real need.
Yeah.
Not just great idea, but if they've got resources provided elsewhere, let's use this money someplace else where it's needed, so that we can
Or
keep
the
that in.
50-50 match or whatever the case may be.
I was
there's-
talked to by a previous legislator, the same thing, it was like, yeah, it'd be great to do a study on broadband, so we really know where our weak points are, so we can go out and get these grants, but he said the same thing. Wisconsin is pouring millions of dollars into broadband, and there's gonna be lots of opportunities if we're set right to go get those funds. Man?
I just want to comment just a little bit on broadband is the grants and the other funding that is available for broadband. A lot of that is going to be dependent upon whether you can document and you can show the speeds that are out there, the average speeds. And if you have an average speed that is not below their threshold, then you're not going to qualify and you're not going to get it. I'm sure that there's areas in Polk County that would qualify, but there's also going to be areas that do not qualify.
Right.
So,
We're talking about specific projects. I really wanted to focus on the process to make sure we can get to those projects and we can, as a board, vote on those projects if they're a priority or how we rank them. I'm assuming the planner will get involved, but go ahead, Mike.
I'm going just a second on Sharon's comments that we've had as a board, we've had priorities here, and maybe it's even time to reassess that a little bit in the light of day to day. But what I was thinking more, and as a perhaps more of a question than anything, but going back to how these guidelines are going to be, are we viewed as a conduit to other units of government in the county, or is is it worded so that we must be, or we can be, or what's that?
keep all the money ourselves.
It shouldn't be, but
No,
that's what,
I mean-
that's what's
I mean, that's
transparent.
a policy thing is we want to spend the 4.25 million on what we would identify as so-called county projects, or do we want to be a conduit to what place it through to other units of government? Or some mixture of that?
Very good observation. We can be.
That would be a
either.
procedural question.
It can be either or both. That's where we're gonna have to set priorities. I've heard people call up and say, well, the trail system, for example, in our county, whatever type of user group you are, we're under a big initiative right now to develop the biggest trail idea and comprehensive plan that we've ever dealt with. Every single person could go to any public park, lake, trail. It's not like building infrastructure for a city or a broadband to a guy's house that don't have broadband. If you think about globally, the county, what affects most people in the county? Obviously, I would think I would think trails and parks and our lakes do. It's the biggest public thing that everyone can go use. There's no key to the door.
Heard a lot of that in public comment earlier this evening, yeah.
Kind of a process thing that I'm thinking about. If we could do some sort of something with our board priorities, get public input on what they think we should do, like a particular project that has to fall under those areas. So we're a little bit winnowed down. We're not getting the universe. I would like some way to have that.
So we set priorities of the board through a process last year. Right? Can we bring those back up? Because we had a whole list. Those are all of them?
Oh, those are the four we got before.
Those are the four. But
We can provide that in the packet with the guidelines.
I get that part. I'm just saying a process that gets public input somehow.
Sure. We'd like to have public input into the process.
Well, of the particular projects that they think under, say, Parks and Trails, I really think blah, 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 parks should have 40 more benches. Stuff like that.
Sure. Okay.
But I look at the list of our priorities, and from what I know about how these funds can be used, I mean, obviously, what's going to go back into our fund balance, is not going to be restricted as to what we can use it for. We can make that decision. But as I look at that and what I know about how the money can be used, the money can't be used for those things.
I think you'd be surprised on how creative you can be to use it for those things.
Well, I guess that depends on, how much.
Right, but then again, we may have a significant chunk of change that can be used for, out of our general fund too. So, the question you may have is when you see all these different projects, you may say, oh, let's do that one because that is so big and important. Or you may say, let's do 4, 5, 6 different ones.
Joe?
I think we're just keep going on and on and on of what we can and what we should and this.
This is the first meeting we've had.
Table this until next month when we see the whole sheets.
Well, yeah, we're not gonna decide on projects tonight. It was more about talking about what are people comfortable about the process, and I think we're getting there. Anyone else about the process? Brad?
So to Fran's point earlier, of 1,200 and some towns, only 40 did not apply for the money. So not very many, but I think we need to be careful in the big picture to not spend money out of this that becomes reoccurring. Year after year, we do whatever this project is. We hire another judge, we make public transportation. That becomes a budgetary issue down the road. That becomes a nightmare for a board down the road. So I think that's the one thing we need to make sure we stay away from is using this money that once it's gone becomes stuck in the budget forever thereafter. I think
that would be a qualifier for a project. If we got projects designed, you would want to know from staff if there's a recurring budget issue that it was going to cost.
Because if all of a sudden we're going to say it's $400,000 a year, then that's
Gotcha.
forever. That has to come out of the budget after that.
Sure.
I think we need to stay away from that.
Yeah, Vince?
Everything should have a sunset. One thing that we need to come together on is how we funnel the suggestion. Mr. Rowdy has a suggestion, great. If you want to funnel it to staff, that we can accumulate them. If you have a constituent that reaches out, they can give it to you, they can give it to me directly, just so that we have a list of all the different ideas that are out there.
So that's a question I have. I personally feel like we should have a process on doing it. So if that is the process, that everyone is going to funnel their ideas to the administrator, that's the process. If the board wants to hear the ideas here, and then the board vets them. So I think that's a big decision here. Does the board want all the ideas to go to the administration, or do they want them to come to the committee of the whole? If Doug has an idea, do you want to bring your idea to the administrator, or do you want to bring it to the committee of the whole? Dan?
Chris, I think you have to centralize that. I don't want to burden Vince with a lot of that, but you've got to bring that to one core with a base of understanding and then pick a top 10 to bring back to the board for some decisions. if you bring every one of those up, we'll be debating for hours about what special interest we might have.
Sure.
But if you got one place that kind of can prioritize based on principles, what we're looking for and what fits the criterion, and say it's 10, brings back 10, we can prioritize and we can understand the cost. We can make decisions on where to go. I just don't think we can do that as a group, but I think it's our obligation as supervisors to either direct those to him or get the constituents to direct those to him for their review and then prioritize those.
Are you comfortable with that, Vince?
I am, and in fact, what I can do is I'm taking notes here of some of the criteria that you're mentioning. We'll include that, and then as I get some ideas, I mean, I can send out a spreadsheet of all of them. And then say, based on these criteria, here are things that we think are important. Let you guys come back and say, no, but this one should be because of blank, blank, blank. Then the question might be, if you narrow it down to a top 10 or 5 or whatever, we'll let those people who propose the ideas make the presentation, if you think.
Then assign staff to assess the cost that'll go along with that.
Oh, yeah, we would be involved as.
Yeah.
John, go ahead.
Isn't Chad going to be the one that knows what the qualifications are? Which ones are qualifiers and which ones are?
Well, to Mr. Ruck's point, what we could do at that point, once we get to that, is we could have a scoring system where we score based on those things. And then bring back the list with the scores after we've scored them. That's probably would be the last step. I think.
Brad?
So do we want the ideas to come through the supervisors? I mean, I see the administrator's phone ringing 12 hours a day from the public. What if they have to call?
That's the question. Do you ever call the administrator?
I do.
Administrator, who calls you the most?
I have no comment.
Well, I can give the specific example. I had a lake association get a hold of me looking for some of that money for an alum treatment in their lake for phosphorus. And talked to Vince about it. There's been some of the lakes that have done that. And he asked me to submit what they're submitting as a proposal to him so he can review it. To my understanding, that would be one that would possibly qualify, but there are other things that get involved with that, whether we prioritize that one or not. But it did come to me, and then after conversation, I passed it on, so he had the ability to view it.
I got the same call from the same lake association, and I got one from another lake association that's got boat ramp issues, that's got a weed issue, same things. They're like, hey, here's all these things we want to do to our lake. And that's where, I was trying to figure out, I don't know how comfortable I am to propose a specific project. But if the board said, hey, a priority is, me, it'd be easier as a supervisor of my district. If the board said, here's the priorities. So someone came to me and said, hey, we got a lake district issue. I said, yeah, that's one of the boxes that we could submit as a project to the board. But if they came to me and said they wanted, a shoulder widened, and they've got this problem on a road and, it says infrastructure, I would say that didn't make the list. I don't know why I would submit that. And that's what I'm just wondering is, how many ideas do we submit? How do we handle those calls from our municipalities? I have 2 in a township. Joe?
Your lake associations have to take control of themselves. Cedar Lake has been working on this algae and stuff for years. And they've got all these grants and they don't understand how much money it takes to put into these lakes. Cedar Lake put $2.2 million in for elm treatment. Not every lake association can do that, and they can't expect the county to do it. So that's my point.
Yep. Hey, John?
Satisfied with the discussion? Maybe
I think it's everyone else.
Can we
Does
adjourn
anyone
and
else
committee
had
as a
any?
whole?
Sounds like we have a consensus.
I think so. And please reach out to me if you ever want to talk, but I think what I can do is kind of make some summary comments to you. And as I get some ideas and we get these criteria set, I'll just communicate them out to you to get us thinking so that by the time we get here next month, we'll say, here's the criteria that we've coalesced around. Here are some of the projects, and then we can move forward from there.
That's why you get the big buck.
Okay, so do we have a motion to adjourn?
They change it every.
Make motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
This committee of the whole.
Let's have a committee of the whole.
Are you sure?
Yep, so we got a first and second committee of the whole. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Approved. Reconvening in the committee of the whole. Line 15, are there any motions or acts on the committee of the whole? I don't see any, so we're gonna, unless someone has something. So we're on discussion on possible action on agenda items from standing committee agenda items and proposed resolutions. Ordinances acted on by standing committees. Number 16 is Environmental Services Committee. Resolution number 30-21, resolution to amend Polk County Code, Section 26-27, Polk County Forest Lands ATV, UTV rules and regulations, regulating activities on county forest lands. Do we have a motion to bring that to the floor? Stacy, seconded by Doug. Further discussion. I know that we had a supervisor asking what it meant, and can we get an explanation maybe from Bob on what this is all about?
Absolutely. Resolution 30-21 really is regulating ATV, UTV use on county forest lands. This was reviewed and refined for several meetings. Environmental Services Committee. It was also vetted and reviewed by PTAG as well as the ATV UTV Council, and we also ran it by recreational officer. Basically, this resolution opens up all county forest roads. A lot of these are old logging roads that are at least 8 feet wide. The ATV. And in it also provides some provisions attached to the resolution. In red line are the restrictions, or at least some conditions regarding ATV and UTV use on county forest. Particularly under section 26-27 D6, 7, 8, 9, and 11. Particularly important. The others are pretty bold.
Can I just stop you a minute? Our pages here are not red line. So if you're gonna refer to red line, you're gonna have to tell us what lines are red line as you go through
It
it.
came out in your email. It's not in any of
I
it.
know, it is on our email, but today it's not.
Okay, we'll go back to the provisions. E sub 6.
5 is red line, 2.
5 is red line. That is kind of boilerplate. Basically, any ATV, UTV that is going to be on county forest logging roads needs to be registered. Number 6, sub 6, April 1st through until the Friday of Memorial Day weekend. They're all closed. And this is obviously to prevent environmental degradation. E7, from the Friday of Memorial Day through September 15th, only designated county forest roads and trails are open. What does that mean? Well, we only have one, that's the Sterling Loop. In the resolution, it refers to it as 5 miles. Well, we've expanded an additional 2.5, so really it's those 7.5 miles Sterling that are open during that season. Number 8, that is probably the biggest provision. That provides for open season between July 1st through November 30th, where you can operate your ATV, UTV on county forest roads. This is really to provide not only access to public space, but also provides access for hunting. Number 9, from December 1st through March 31st, you can ride your designated, you can ride your ATV, UTV on designated roads. This coincides with the snowmobile season if there's a 4-inch. The other one to note is number 11 or sub 11, which was really a kind of a debatable topic, surprisingly enough, but the speed limit is to be 25 miles. Everything else is pretty much boilerplate. You have to have a spark arrestor. Prevent forest fires, for example, you can't be reckless, etc. So that is the resolution. I will tell you that there's a fiscal impact, primarily because we need to sign these tracks and roads because, well, sometimes you cross into private property. County staff will manage, inspect, and monitor these county roads, in particular, our forest administrator, some trails coordinator, and our forester. The impact, well, we're looking at increasing the mileage again on county owned forest land from 7.5 miles to 35 miles. Now, this will be a destination for a lot of folks. It's really about access for hunters. A lot of these logging roads, been there a while. They're dead ends, or they just go off onto just an adjacent area for when the logging is taking place, the selective cutting. But this is sort of an interesting time. If these trails do evolve into an artery for recreation, then we will apply for state aid. Then we'll need to designate. So those will be state designated trails in which we would see state aid. We'll point out that until they're designated, it is the county's responsibility to operate. Because if you build a trail, the expectation.
So the committee chair, how was this voted out of your committee?
I think unanimous.
Tracy, you have a question for?
Just for clarity, the bottom total, didn't Mark say that was closer to 14,000 instead of 11?
No, that's.
I thought he said it came in higher. I know I scratched it off the 11 and put 14. I didn't bring my environmental service one with, but I thought that was 14.
That lacking labor, Mo?
Yeah, it did include labor and equipment.
This 11,000 includes labor and equipment?
Does not.
It's not.
So then if you thought 14,000.
Sure.
And I don't know if it's a big deal, but I
think
just
you're-
know that we had changed or Mark had brought that to our attention.
I think that's correct. We're missing the labor. Labor cost.
The labor cost is not new labor cost, it's just using existing labor to do this work, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's just an allocation issue. Doesn't affect the budget, the county, right? Right. This would be an expenditure that you would have to take out of what general fund? Or out of your fund?
I believe it was gonna come out of the dedicated trail funds.
Oh, because we appropriated.
We have a $200,000 line this year.
Sure, so that's what the money's for.
Yes,
So we have the money to do it.
correct.
Amy?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we've had this around at PTAG also. So what this resolution does is a couple things. It's sort of codifying that ATV, UTVs are allowed on forest lands. And we also talk about the Sterling Loop, dedicated ATV trail. But these forest roads are multi-use. So horses can be on them, bikes can be on them, hikers can be on them, walking hunters, right? So.
Right.
Is there not a trail?
Right now,
Yeah.
we use very much.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
So and this will be a new frontier for us. And again, our staff will monitor them. I mean, if there is environmental degradation, we'll fix them. But in the meantime, we'll have to designate them and burn them until they're up to standards. So that's
Why they're not a trail, because there's a different standard.
right. And again, there are responsibility as a county till you become designated eligible for state.
Where trail we designate.
Like, well, there needs to be usage there. Activity helps. So I don't really see, these opening the gates as a destination to go out and recreate on forest land. It's really, again, to provide access for residents and hunters.
Go ahead, Mike.
Ask if any of the Ice Age trail goes through county forests, and if so, if any part of that is on any of these that are spelled out in the resolution.
The Ice Age Trail does go through some portions of the county forest.
They're not 8 feet wide, though, I don't believe.
Not 8 feet wide.
And I think some of them may be, that's why I'm asking.
It reminds me, like in the area in Lorraine, there is a snowmobile trail that is adjacent to the Ice Age Trail, but it's not conflicting, it's separate. You don't see any conflicts, Supervisor Fisher?
Well, as I'm saying, I haven't looked at a county map, what it all's entailed here, but I wonder how carefully this is all looked at as to what other possible uses are being made at this time, equestrian, Ice Age, and so on, and what, if we're saying that everything can be on these trails, and any kind of runs down them all, and have everything. So be it.
Mark looked at that pretty closely. I mean, he didn't.
These are considered roads, not a trail.
Yeah.
It's a
Well,
road.
my recollection is some of the Ice Age Trail is on county forest roads.
County forest roads.
Go ahead, Doug.
I thought you were still going, but
No, you're good.
it's our understanding, and I say ours because the ATV UT Club, the Snowmobile Club, they can tell you this more specifically. But Forester told us that these forest roads are funded with state tax money because automotive cars, trucks, anything can drive. But when they're designated, then the ATV UTV Club gets funds at half the normal fund for a trail to maintain those roads. So there's additional funds to take care of one that's a designated trail. But there's more money than the state has, a lot of ATV UTV. So popular.
That's a very good point. And once they become designated, oftentimes we have a club that will do the own.
Supervisor Warndall.
One of the big concerns I have is this, here's the guy that's been coming up for 35 years. He's the guy that puts the backpack on and loads his rifle and walks all the way back in the middle of a section to, so he walks on that road, he gets back there and he gets set up. And November 30th will still be deer season. And here comes people driving where he's never had them drive. It seems that you should have some restriction during deer season. And if not, are these people going to wear orange that are driving these vehicles?
It's public use to use, and if they're not doing orange, they're breaking the law, because it's hunting season.
Oh, when they're driving, they have to have orange on.
Yeah, you have to have,
States don't.
I don't know, it seems,
it's all DNR stuff. So
it
that's
seems like a can of worms to me. I mean, it's been going on for years out there, this guy. I mean, I guess things change. You lose your ability to hunt the way you want to.
but you could be the second guy there. What if somebody else walked in today? You know what I mean?
You get there quicker
You,
now.
you
Warndall.
can't.
Yeah, not me, I drive this deer season.
Yes. But when
All
it's
right,
public,
so
I mean, you can never
We've
say.
had a good discussion. I believe Bob's explained it very well. We understand it's been vetted through multiple committees. We've had a motion and a second for discussion. We'd like to ready to vote on this. All in favor of resolution 30-21, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We got resolution for public safety and public works. Resolution number 35-21, resolution support of the American police officer. We have a motion to bring that to the floor.
Okay.
Second by John. Is there further discussion on this resolution? Seeing none. Do we want to make a comment about it? We have a representative from the sheriff department here. Is there any need to discuss this? Supervisor Olson, you signed it?
Yep.
We all good? Okay. All in favor by saying aye? Aye. Opposed? Same sign. Supervisors announcements. I know a couple of you wanted to talk about a couple things coming up. Remember who that was? Warrendall?
Quite a lot of work done down at the fairgrounds, a lot of volunteer help down there. One contractor brought his entire crew in for 2 days, patched some roofs that had holes in them because trees fell through them and that type of thing. Another contractor came and painted. The second contractor went and bought a sprayer and continued to paint. So there's quite a lot of painting went on down there. Lime Quarry donated some material for putting the H barn. I went down with my skid steer and put the material in for them. A lot of shaping up there. And as far as that vaccination thing, I've worked down there in the medical. You have all you can do to keep up with all the medical stuff that's going on the way it is down there. It's all volunteer. There's no place to take somebody if they're overheated, so to speak. I mean, you're just kind of vulnerable when somebody gets heat stroke or falls down or many things you deal with there. So I can understand fairgrounds questioning whether they need an additional hazard.
Sure.
There's so much to do.
Yep.
It's just tremendous. It's all volunteer. Our department's pushing volunteers there too, so as do all others.
Anyone else? John, yeah, you had things about what's going on with.
Yeah, I have to take a few minutes and give you an update. Month of July now is the resolutions, the Johnson Counties Association. And I'll make it as quick as I can, but our number one thing over there is substance review. And we have 5 steering committee meetings and one last Friday. That was Polk County had a resolution. What happens is on these budgets that our department gets, they never fund them 100%. And I just give the staff, Bob's staff and the sheriff's department all the credit for bringing these resolutions, writing them up, and I'm taking them to the entire conference of 72 counties. Last Friday, they had a resolution to make the state fund 100%. Bob says they're usually, and they're usually throughout the staff, they're getting about 70%. And that really cuts a water specialist or somebody out. So it's a lot like the gas tax. You know, we had to have 2 referendums to make sure that the federal gas tax stayed in the transportation department. So they drew up a resolution, I presented it, and to my surprise, it passed 100%. There was no nays. So our Wisconsin Association will take that part of that resolution. They have to fund it 100%, live up to their commitment. And then the other part of that was they had a resolution to fund the Conservation Department at $13.5 million. I think 2 years ago, it was $4 million, and then it went to 7. And Governor, I think, set it at 11. So trying to get it funded up to the ability. Now this, I'm leaving at 6 o'clock in the morning. there's 3 in a row now this week, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Tomorrow is personnel, finance, and county organizations. Thursday, it's judicial and public safety. And Friday, it's health and human services. So all these agendas, and I got a duplicate copy of everything, all the agendas and all the resolutions are, I leave at the clerk. So you can come in from 10 o'clock on, and you can.
We have 3 of them that you're going to be voting on.
Yeah, no.
In the county.
What I got to do is, the sheriff's department basically has 3 resolutions I'm going to present in. 1 Thursday and 2 on Friday, and every one of them has something to do with substance abuse in Polk County. I won't read the whereas. Tomorrow it says Polk County authorizing the lobbying of the Wisconsin State Legislature to increase funding to the Attorney General for drug crime prosecution. Because it's come from this county board that people aren't satisfied with the prosecution. So I'll be presenting that one tomorrow. I think, first of all, it goes to, they've all went to a resolution committee. The one last Friday, the resolution committee recommended it pass. So that helped. Then on Friday, and this one is a conjunction with St. Croix County and Polk County. And that's increase for child support funding. I won't read you all the whereases. There's 8 whereases of that. Another one on Friday, a resolution from Polk County authorizing lobbying of the Wisconsin State Legislature to create community-based inpatient and outpatient substance abuse treatment facility. If we have somebody from Polk County that has to be sent for substance treatment abuse, it's there's really no facility unless they go other part of the state. Another one on Friday from has to do with the sheriff's department authorizing lobbying of the Wisconsin State Legislature to create a state substance abuse database.
Kind of what Chad's working on now.
Yeah,
and I gotta just say, I can't tell you, John, how important John is doing. I know, Joe, you want to get out of here, but I tell you what, this guy is doing a lot of heavy lifting in Polk County, and he's got a way about him to go there and twist some arms to get our stuff done. And I just want to thank you, John, for doing what you're doing.
We had a lot of support. For instance, last Friday didn't have anything to do with the resolution. But I wrote up some notes and I gave them to Dan Barr. He's our state coordinator. He's the lobbyist and the president from the county, Mr. Wood from Winnebago County on Highway 65. And
he's a schmoozer. He's getting stuff done. That's the point.
And both of them, before we adjourned, both of them said,
there we go.
Make sure you go to your legislators and you support John's work on Highway 65 so we get it done as a gateway to the north.
Joe, go ahead.
Wait, adjourn.
Okay, got a second.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye.